Good evening. I'm calling to order the City of Southfield regular meeting of the Planning Commission for June 28, 2023. May we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Bernuti? Present. Ms. Goodwin-Dye? Present. Dr. Stevens-Gunn?
Present.
Mr. Willis?
Here.
Ms. Gruber?
Present.
Mr. Martin?
Present.
Mr. Griffiths is excused today. Madam Chair, you do have a quorum to conduct business.
Okay. Everyone, you've had an opportunity to look at our agenda for item E. Item E will be handled by our administrative team, therefore we'll not take a vote on it. So there will be no vote on item E, the site plan review for PSP 23-0009. With that, are there any is there a motion to approve the agenda?
To the chair. Motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Martin and second by Commissioner Bernuti that we accept today's agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Alec, can you give us some, announcements and communications. Do you have any announcements and communications for this evening?
No announcements.
Okay, moving on. Is there, can you give us some background on PSLU 23-0007?
Yes, ma'am. So this is a property owned by NTK Investments. It's located at 21680 West 8 Mile between Evergreen Road and Losser. They are going through the special use to allow for recreational adult use marijuana to become a legal grow facility. As previously discussed, this was brought before you a couple years ago in June 2020 for medical grow and was approved. Currently, as you see the existing conditions on the right and an aerial of the site, you see the industrial nature of the area. As we see in the current and future land use. Here is a site plan, the floor plan as well, various rooms for different plants, as well as their elevations. And then I'll invite the petitioner, Kuza, up for any comments.
Is the petitioner present?
State your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Johnny Mamo,
Richard Gattano.
Yeah.
21680 West 8 Mile.
Young man, your address?
21680 West 8 Mile.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead and tell them about your project.
Oh, we are currently medical cannabis company right now. We're looking to do recreational. Yeah, that's basically what we're trying to do here. Yep.
No, you said everything, basically.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Nothing changes. But nothing changes as far as the way of operation or anything. So.
Okay. Planner Crowe, do you have comments?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for PSLU 23-0007. If there's anyone that'd like to have public comment regarding this, please approach the podium. You have 3 minutes to share your thoughts. Please start by your name and your address.
Hi, Yolanda Williams-Davis, Southfield resident and real estate broker. Address is 22200 West 11 Mile Road, number 3356, again, Southfield, Michigan. So I was part of recently a cohort of business owners, such as the entity that we have in front of us, who was petitioning the city of Detroit, wanting to establish various types of cannabis businesses. And yes, medical marijuana is helpful for those who absolutely need it. Recreational marijuana brings another element. I do not want recreational marijuana in the city in which I've raised my sons and I'm raising my grandchildren. So that is my take on it. I'm opposed to it.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
No.
Is there any additional public comment for PSLU 23-0007? Is there any additional public comment for PSLU 23-0007? Given none, I close the public hearing. At this time, commissioners, Commissioner Martin?
At the current, on the current floor plan, you have a processing area is at the front of the building. Is that area going to be used for sales? Do you have customers coming in for retail, retail customers coming in to buy for other?
Through the chair, this is just a processing grow facility. No retail sales is permitted. Then they have to have a secure transporter pick up the material and then deliver it to a provisioning center and or an adult use retailer. So there's no retail sales permitted at this site.
Terribly sorry, I forgot about all of that. You have a water control system. Do you have separation of water for the, I assume you have different type of plants in the grow facility?
Yep, all the same plants, yes.
So do you have different sources or usage for the water? Is the same water used on all the plants?
Yes.
So there's no changes in that? And basically all the plants are all the same. There are just single, nothing special is done to them during the grow process. It's after the grow process that they're treated for different.
As far as we, it's all the same, they're all the same plants.
Through the chair, is there any differences in your grower processing between what you do currently for medical marijuana and for adult use? That's what the question is.
No, sir.
No other questions, thank you.
Before we proceed, I'm going to ask the conversation in the back of the room to conclude. This room, we hear everything, it bounces off the walls. Thank you very much. Commissioner Gruber?
No questions.
Commissioner Willis?
I think you were here before and said you had 11 employees thereabout, and that the number of employees will increase.
Yes.
Do you know to how many?
About 20 to 30.
Okay. And there was a time when individuals engaging in the marijuana business could not engage in bank transactions. Is that still true?
No.
Okay, so you are able to establish a regular payroll? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Direct deposits, all the employees from the bank.
Okay. Okay. I have no further questions.
Commissioner Goodwin-Dye?
Yes, how much will you have to increase your product or your plants to sustain medical and adult?
Everything is the same. The only thing, the difference is the tag. Everything else is the same process of growing, same light, same.
No, I'm not asking about your process. I'm asking how many additional plants will you have to have to sustain?
2,000
Okay.
for our Class C license.
So the building that you're currently in has enough space for you to add all of those additional plants?
Yes.
And there's currently empty rooms right now, right, within the facility?
Commissioner Bernuti? Thank you. How will you market your product?
How you market your product?
How will you market your product?
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, thank
Yeah,
you.
you know how to say it. We go through what's called leafly. So all the like dispensaries and people that purchase the product through metrics, they look at that same website as well.
All right, and to reiterate about your product, how will it be tested?
It gets tested through a lab. So there's what is that?
So, it gets tested to the laboratory, they come and sample the product, and they give us the results. It's at the-
How often do they do that?
Every harvest.
Okay. And the security, once you're going to have this additional business, how will the security be handled?
There's no security. It's monitored by cameras and everything because there's no outside people coming in. It's just
You
a
have
data-
outside cameras and,
Yes.
And you guys have
Lighting.
electronic clocks as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
that's all for now.
Commissioner Martin has an additional question.
Yeah, you have a clean room. What is the purpose of the clean room?
The clean rooms for shipping and receiving. So any products that come into the building from the shipping and receiving, we clean and monitor and put them into a space. Therefore, there's no bugs or pesticides that can enter the building. So everything that comes into the building gets cleaned in through the shipping and receiving area before they even enters the building.
So it's entering and exiting?
Just
Oh, it's just.
yeah, entering.
You don't-
That's just for shipping and receiving. Everything is quarantined in that space until everything is killed, and we do go through protocol.
You don't have any processes where the employees could get dust or anything from the plants on them physically?
No.
Thinking of a shower room or something like that, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, we
Okay.
all of our employees, we come in every day. We wear scrubs, and we wash and dry their clothes every day. So every time you come in, you have a new, fresh set of clean clothes.
So, but the clean room is not for the employees, it's for the products coming, for anything coming into.
Yes.
I understand, okay, thank you.
Commissioners, are there any other questions? Commissioner Martin?
No, I'm not. Thank
Okay.
you.
Call for the recommendation, please.
Through the chair,
Yes.
if, I'd like to just make a comment and have a question before we go to the recommendation. Just remind the commission that there's a 22-point security checklist that they have to work with the Southfield Police Department on. So that covers all the security issues. Secondly, how many plants do you currently have under your medical marijuana license?
Right now it's 1,500.
No, 2 Class C licenses.
Class C, so it's 3,000.
Okay, so you have 2 Class
C licenses.
Oh, that Class C.
C,
Yeah,
so you have 3,000, and then you're going to ask for 2 Class C adult use for additional 2,000,
Yes.
for a total of 5,000 plants. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. The planning department recommends favorable recommendation of the special use request of NTK Investments LLC on behalf of the owner, J&R Ventures LLC, to convert an existing industrial building, medical marijuana grow and processing facility to an adult use marijuana grower in accordance with Southfield Ordinance and the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act on property located at 21680 West 8 Mile on the north side of 8 Mile Road between Evergreen and Lassa Roads for the following reasons and conditions. The submitted special use, along with any conditions recommended by the Planning Department and the Planning Commission, will be of such size and character that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the I-1 district. The location, size, intensity, and periods of operation are designed to eliminate any possible nuisance likely to emanate there from which there might be adverse to occupants of any other nearby permitted uses. The proposed use is in accord with the spirit and purpose of this chapter and is not inconsistent with or contrary to the objectives sought to be accomplished by this chapter and principles of sound planning. The proposed use is of such character that the vehicular traffic generated will not have an adverse effect or be detrimental to the surrounding land uses or the adjacent thoroughfares. The proposed use is of such character and intensity and arranged on the site so as to eliminate any adverse effects resulting from noise, dust, dirt, glare, odor, or fumes. The proposed use will not be adverse to promotion of health, safety, or welfare of the community. The proposed use is designed and operated so as to provide security and safety to the employees and the general public. Following conditions: approval of the site plan by the city planner. The petitioner is to provide an odor control plan. The petitioner is to provide a wastewater control plan. The petitioner is to provide a security plan, and the hours of operation are as followed. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Through the chair, I would move for favorable consideration for PSLU 23-0007.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner Martin. It's been moved by Commissioner Willis and second by Commissioner Martin that we accept the favorable recommendation of PSLU 23-0007. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Again, I reiterate that PSP 23-0009, the site plan review for NTK Investment LLC, is going to be handled by the administrative offices. So we're going to move right on down to information regarding PSLU 23-0008. Planner Crode.
Good evening. I'll present PSLU 23-008 as well as PSP 23-00010. Petitioners, the City of Southfield, Parks and Rec Department. Address is 22200 Beach Road, south of Beachwoods Recreational Center and east of Beachwood Road. Existing zoning is rural estate residential. Special use request and site plan review is to allow for a 6,710 square foot recreation water splash pad and supporting amenity building, parking, and landscaping within an approximately 80-acre community park. This is the proposed location of the splash pad. As I stated, current zoning is rural estate residential. Future land use plan is consistent with park and recreation conservation. Setback and building heights are provided on this slide here. This is the woodlands tree removal plan, and then proposed landscape plan with landscape schedule. These are all the details. A new entrance will come in off a beach. And then elevations of the proposed office, restroom, and equipment storage facility. There will also be a maintenance garage. And then a couple picnic pavilions supporting the facility. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the Parks and Recreation team that will continue the presentation, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have after we hold our public hearing.
Good evening, Commissioners. Terry Fields, Parks and Recreation Director. It's good to see you. I think Terry described the depth and the scope of the project very well, so I am not going to waste any time here, and I'm going to introduce Chris Riggert, who will go through the Beachwoods Park Improvement Phase 1 plan, and then we can answer any questions.
Good evening to the Commission. As Ms. Fields said, my name is Chris Riggert. I'm a project manager and landscape architect at OHM Advisors. We're a full-service design and engineering firm. We do a lot of work with the City of Southfield. We've had the privilege to work with the Parks and Recreation Department and the city on advancing this exciting plan. This is the first phase of implementation of the Beachwoods Master Plan that was conducted over 2 years ago. This here on this slide, you can see the park. And so that we can get everybody oriented, 9 Mile is actually on the left side of the page. The park was turned sideways here. We're really focusing on the center of the park just south of the recreation center. One thing I'll say is that the reason for this master plan was that the 9-hole golf course was chosen to be closed due to long-standing maintenance issues that would be difficult to address, difficult if not impossible to fully address. So the golf course was closed. This site also used to be home to a public pool, an ice arena, and even before it was a park, it was a quarry. So since the pool was there and the ice arena was there, those have since closed. The 9-hole golf course has since closed. So this park is one of Southfield's largest parks at over 80 acres, and probably over 60 acres at this point are generally not accessible to the public and therefore cannot be used by the general public. So the stated goal of the master plan was to breathe new life into this park and make sure we can utilize this and provide high-quality recreation opportunities for the city of Southfield and its residents. When we established this project, and at the outset, we set a number of goals that really have been guiding us through this project, that this needs to be reflective of community desires, this needs to be connected, and accessible, it needs to be site-specific and respect the existing landscape of Beachwoods Park, sustainable, both in terms of environmental sustainability, but also operational maintenance sustainability, that this is a facility that is within the bounds and capabilities of the city to maintain in perpetuity. Safety, this needs to be both you need to feel safe using the park, but it also needs to be physically safe. Exciting and innovative, like I said, breathing new life into a park that at this point is sitting vacant, and inclusive. This was added in the most recent phase as we got into the details of the design. It's critical that we make sure that this park is welcoming to anybody regardless of age, ability, or background. And that's been incorporated in this plan, and I can highlight some of those opportunities. This plan here is the outcome of the master plan. You can see the master plan sought to activate the full park with the heavier programming towards the north, working towards the south towards more naturalistic spaces, more of a trails and natural landscape type space. So our focus is at what we called the hub, which at that point included an entrance drive, a parking lot, a playground, and a splash pad, as well as maintenance to the maintenance garage. As we worked through this project, we looked at, we did a benchmarking process to understand what do other communities have in Southeast Michigan, how can we make sure that we're offering the same quality here in Southfield. And we looked at Lily Pad Springs as one example. This is in West Bloomfield. This is a similar type facility to what we've designed, and not only did we look at the design and layout of this, but the Parks and Recreation team also met with the West Bloomfield staff who have been running and operating this facility to understand what some of the challenges they face, as well as what are some of the lessons that they would offer that we can incorporate into this plan. And there have been a number of them that we've built in to make sure that this facility is really top-notch and something that can be maintained, like I said, in perpetuity. In terms of locating the project, this was kind of set more at the master planning stage, but there was consideration to why this project is located in this area. We wanted to minimize conflict with other park uses, so there are some other things happening up towards the north of the site that would potentially conflict with this. We're looking to maintain as much open space and woodland as we can, so the design of the project follows some of the fairways of the golf course that was there previously and seeks to maintain as much of the woodland as possible. It's also located in some of the flattest terrain. As you start to move south from there, the grade really picks up as you get to the Rouge River, making some of those locations not suitable for the type of project that we're looking to install. I'll also say that there was thought too about trying to locate this within the landscape so that we can use the natural vegetation to buffer this from the surrounding community. While it's not centered in the park, this next slide will show it really is kind of centered between the two streets of Beach and Carlton, so that we're trying to, tuck this into the landscape as much as we can. And like I said, utilize that vegetation. We've included this, this graphic here to kind of get a bearing on what some of the dimensions are. And so as from the center of the splash pad, if we drop some of these radiuses in, we use 350 feet, which is about what a standard city block is, between 300 and 350 feet. If you also want another metric, you could think of a football field, which is 300 feet. So we're at 700 feet is when we're starting to be at the front and backyards of the surrounding community. There are 2 homes that are actually inset within the park that are in closer proximity, and Parks and Recreation is working through those 2 properties.
Through the chair, Chris, could you go back one slide?
Yes,
Just
sir.
for everybody's orientation, will you point out the recreation facility and where the former pool was located in relationship to this?
Yes, so
There's a pointer on
there we go. So this is the existing recreation facility. This right here is the old pool that basically got filled in. So that was located pretty much right along Beach Road. Our facility, the bulk of the activity is going to be back towards here, probably, a good ways back from Beach and tucked into the, again, like I said, the fairways are here, and we're looking to keep the existing vegetation as much as we can. This is the site plan. The project includes a new entrance drive off of Beach Road, a new parking lot, which is roughly 140 spaces, 2 new picnic shelters. This will also serve as the trailhead to a larger trail network, which is going to extend the full park. At this point, that trail network is not designed, but this project, I'll say, is not just about a splash pad. It's about the first phase of realizing the master plan and realizing other uses as well. So the intent is that this is going to be a destination or a park that people can use, and there's lots of different programming options. The first phase here is the splash pad. So that's really the larger component of this. There is a drop-off, a splash pad. That splash pad is serviced by 3 buildings, which Terry Planner Crode shared with you. If we walk through the components of the plan, a new curb cut, an entrance here. On the outbound, there are 2 exit lanes to turn left and right. There's also stormwater management. We recognize that this project comes with a decent amount of impervious surface, or surface that can't necessarily allow water to infiltrate, given that it's hardscape. We're managing all that water on site. So like I said, one of our goals is sustainability. We are managing the Oakland County standards fully on this site. So I believe that's a 100-year storm we'll be able to manage through green stormwater infrastructure here before it makes its way into the storm sewer system. I'll also point out that there is, we are conscious of some of the proximal properties, to try to help mitigate some of that. There are evergreen buffers that are planted along those property lines, both to the north on that image, and here, something to the south where there may be more people. So we are putting in some buffering, more stormwater management here, open space, lots of landscaping. We're looking to make sure we can reestablish the tree canopy. Like we said, we are impacting some of those trees out of necessity. Some of them are not the highest quality of trees, so it's actually, a little bit more of a hazard mitigation to remove some of them. But within this plan, we're meeting the ordinance to try to reforest this in a way that'll be establish a legacy canopy. As we move to the north, you can see more of the parking lot. You can see more of the landscaping and the picnic shelters here. One thing I'll point out is, inclusivity was something that was important during the design process. We are exceeding the number of ADA spaces that are required here, and we're actually distributing them throughout the parking lot, so that if you're somebody who needs an assistive device, there's not just one area for you to park. You can park closer to, the activity that you've come to the site to use. This is the splash pad proper, and we've got a few renderings that we can show of this, but there is a drop-off zone here. There's an entrance area that includes seating and misting poles, so we'll see this in a rendering, but if you've come to the site to use the trail system, for example, or the picnic shelters, but you aren't necessarily using the splash pad, there's a component that's outside the fence of the splash pad that you can use to cool yourself off and enjoy some aspect of the water play, even if you're not entering the facility. The splash pad will have a fence around it, and it will be a paid facility. So, there is 3 buildings. The first is an admissions building where people will come and buy their tickets. They'll then be able to come into the splash pad and enjoy themselves. One thing I'll point out is that the restroom is heated. So outside of the 3 months of use of the splash pad will be in operation generally from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Outside of that, there's still a plan to activate this park. So if you want to come and use the trails during the wintertime, the restroom will be accessible and open and heated. So there will be new opportunity to use this park where there hasn't been the ability to do that prior. Here's a few views of the splash pad. From above, we're kind of hovering above the parking lot, looking down at the pad. You can see the entrance drop-off area. You can see the pad itself. You can see there's a tucked back behind these trees is a picnic shelter. There's another one right here. And then this path right here is the new trailhead entrance into a trail network that eventually will enter the rest of the park. Here's another view. We've sort of rotated a little bit. You can see the fenced-in area. We're looking to make this a really high-quality space that people will really enjoy. So there's a lot of landscaping, a lot of trees, a lot of thought to the enrichment that these spaces will provide to both adults and children. There's shade. Once you combine water and sun, it can get kind of hot. So there's plenty of shade opportunities and areas for seating. And if we sort of get down to ground level now and walk through the splash pad, this is the view you'd see as you come from the parking lot. So you'll see this is the admissions building right here where you'll come and get your tickets. These are those misting poles that if you wanted to sit in this plaza and enjoy, and cool down a little bit, you have the opportunity to do that. And actually, this is the restroom building as well. So within the restroom, there are ganged restrooms by gender, so male and female, as well as 2 family restrooms. So if you need a little more space, there are 2 rooms for that. There's also vending here as well. There's no concessions, but there are opportunities for vending that are housed within the restroom building. Inside the splash pad here, as we look around, you can see the backsides of those buildings. We've now paid our admission. We've come in. Where we're standing is on what looks like turf. It's actually artificial turf, which is going to be a place where, if there's maybe not a bench to sit on, families can come and bring a beach towel and be able to use the lawn space. It's important that it's artificial too because we don't want to track the debris into the water management system into the pad because it is a recirculating system. So the water that's here is recirculated and treated and then reused. So every year at the beginning, there's a 6,000-gallon tank that's filled up, and there's a treatment system that's managed by the state. It's actually permitted exactly like a pool. So the Department of Public Health is responsible for reviewing and permitting this facility, and it's the exact same folks that would be reviewing a pool. And so there's plenty of regulations on the mechanical equipment to ensure proper function, and we'll be following all of those within the design. Here's another view as we walk around. This is really focusing on the seating areas, so you can kind of see what the spaces look like around the splash pad. So we've got landscaping, we've got tables and chairs. One thing I'll point out is that in addition to the 4 top tables, we've got 3 top tables suitable for someone who may be in an assistive device like a wheelchair, that they can roll up to a table and be able to use that alongside other people who may be fully able. In addition to the ability to use the tables, there are a number of ground-based sprays in the splash pad that cater to really everybody, and that's a component of universal design that we're looking to incorporate, which is that if there's an experience to be had by one, that we can share that experience to all. So here, if you're in an assistive device or a wheelchair, you can use those ground-based sprays and still enjoy the splash pad. We've moved around a little bit, and here is another view of another shaded seating area looking in towards the splash pad. You can see the back sides of the buildings that are here. Right now, they're a white masonry, but ultimately the intent is to activate those with some type of art. So that may not happen necessarily right when this project opens, but I think over time, my understanding from Parks and Recreation is the desire to include the community to put murals and other art onto the faces that face the splash pad and continue to enrich the space. We've exited the splash pad now, and we're looking back towards the restroom facility. So this is the restroom building. This is one of the doors that leads to the ganged restrooms. This is one of the family restrooms, and so it's mirrored in that way. And then here are the vending machines at the face of the building. This is a view from the picnic shelter, and you can kind of see what the character of space is around this. It incorporates some of the same materials as the buildings from the splash pad. It also has visibility back towards the splash pad, so there's thoughts about being able to picnic here, being able to go and use the splash pad and come back, and keeping the visibility there, separation so that they're two separate spaces, but visibility so that you can picnic here and kind of use the splash pad as well. So these are a few views that are rendered up by our splash pad consultant. What I'll say is, for this project, it takes a very specialized skill set to be able to design a splash pad of this type. And so during this project, we did an RFQ. The city issued an RFQ to solicit splash pad designers and installers. The organization that rose to the top is known as Vortex Aquatics. They do these types of projects all across the world. They're really the industry leader in this type of project. And so what I'll say too is that they have a number of features in this project that are going to be first to market and don't exist anywhere else. So there's a few features. The misting heads that we put out front is a new feature that's going to be unique to Southfield. There's some other components here within this splash pad that will be unique to Southfield, and Southfield will be the first to have those here and available. So this is really going to be a state-of-the-art, high-quality facility that Parks and Recreation has never really had to offer to its residents before. So it's really exciting in that way. As we look around, there are a number of slides here. So the splash pad is kind of in two parts. It's the ground-based play and then the structure itself. And you can see within the structure there's a number of slides and features. Parks and Recreation will staff this accordingly to make sure this is safe. I'm sure Terry can, if there's questions about staffing, Terry can answer those. But I'll say that, the splash pad designers, it looks like there's a lot going on, but there's actually a lot of thought that goes into where these features are placed. And there's 3 zones within the splash pad that cater to toddlers, teens, and to families. And so we've designed our spaces sort of around this so that, really we can offer a great experience for a variety of users regardless of their age. So a few more views here. The one that I'll point out is this spinning piece right here. That's a new feature. It actually does spin and the water sprays out, in a circular pattern. So our designers have put a lot of thought into making sure that there's not just a lot of play to be had, but a lot of enriching play based off the age group of the users. Now, Parks and Recreation has held 2 public hearings, or public meetings, I should say, informational sessions to share information about the project and collect comments from residents. And we have heard some concerns from residents, and I think you'll hear some of those this evening. We take those very seriously, and we've looked at how to incorporate those into the project or how we may have addressed those. One thing I will say is that the goal of the project, of the master plan 2 years ago, was to bring people to Beechwoods Park, to a vacant park. So on some level, any use that we put into this park is going to bring new cars on Beach Road. It's going to bring new sounds inside the park. It's going to bring new needs for maintenance and operations. So those needs are really kind of global to any type of improvement that we would put in this park. We've done our best to mitigate those within the project, and I can talk through some of those, and then Terry, if there's anything to add, can hop in here. So in terms of operations and maintenance, this will be staffed appropriately to be able to maintain a safe splash pad. We are replacing the maintenance garage there, so there'll be enhanced abilities for ground maintenance to make sure this is, there's no trash on the ground and that this is a good looking and attractive space. There's also some thoughts about potentially ramp up of the usage. So maybe the first year, the picnic shelters are not necessarily rented, so that Parks and Recreation can get up to speed on how this facility operates and make tweaks through the year and bring the usage up accordingly. In terms of traffic and parking, we did conduct a traffic analysis based off of the traffic volumes that we anticipate will be generated from this facility. as well as, based off of the traffic counts along Beach Road. We have fairly accurate traffic counts for Beach Road because it was recently reconstructed. And before that project went away, the traffic counts were taken. So we have a good idea of how many cars are actually on Beach Road. We also have a good idea using precedent facilities, how many cars are going to come and go from this. And what I can say is, there will be some cars added to Beach Road. I think, like I said, that's going to be a reality of any type of new use in the park. But what our traffic engineer's analysis shows is that what we're talking about here is hundreds of cars, not thousands of cars. And with the capacity of Beach Road, there should be no issues to incorporate that without, needing to add another lane or any type of reconfiguration of the roadway. There is overflow parking as well. If the parking lot fills up, there is the parking lot north of the Recreation Center. And in terms of the capacity of the parking lot, it actually exceeds the requirements set forth by the zoning ordinance to provide parking spaces based off the size of this facility. In terms of noise and the usage of the facility, the primary component, the splash pad, is really going to be in operation for 3 months. That's going to be from Memorial Day to Labor Day. There will be no amplified sound. I think one of the things that we heard during the master plan phase was some heartache that the pool would actually have speakers that would play music, and residents could hear that since it was right on Beach Road. So there was a conscious decision here to not include that as a result of what we learned from that. We also, like I said, looked to buffer this site using the existing vegetation and new vegetation as much as possible. In terms of safety, this is all designed with safety in mind. So that includes staff that are trained in the appropriate ways, clear sight lines to and from parts of the facility. The parking lot will be lit, and the lighting is purely for security reasons. It's not to bring anybody in during after hours because the park will close at dusk. The larger park will close at dusk, but those lights will be set to a secure level so that if an officer were to come through or a neighbor were to see something happening, that there is visibility to know that that's happening and to alert the authorities so it can be taken care of. Parks and Recreation, has been working with the police and the police chief to continue the ongoing monitoring of Beachwoods Park. And as I understand, we truly believe that this is not going to be a nuisance facility. We've designed something that we believe strikes the balance between something that minimizes the impact to residents, but also provides a really high quality, great facility. But like we said with the ramp up, I think the intent is to continue to monitor and learn from this facility as it's built. We've addressed what we believe we can within the design right now, but I believe the intent is to continue on and understand that if truly there are negative impacts that come out of this, that Parks and Recreation is mobilized to be able to address them. So there will be opportunity, I think, to continue to build out this park, and if there's additional things that, considerations that need to happen in the next phase to be able to address some things, I think that's part of the conversation. So with that, I will close and see if, Terry, you have anything to add, answer any questions.
Planner Crowe?
I recommend that we open the public hearing first, and then after the public hearing has taken place, then we'll bring the team back up to answer questions.
Okay. To the community, we want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard and that their concerns are heard by the commission. In order for us to do that, I'm going to ask everyone to please take a moment to review the public comments, rules and parameters that are on the back of the agenda so that we all are on the same page. So take a moment to review that. Also, we have 2 lists here of people who have signed up for public comments. But if you have not signed these lists, then I need you to sign the list so that we can have you. Yes, Terry?
Yeah, through the chair, we can go through the people who have already signed up, and then there's an additional list up here in case afterwards, if there's any additional public. It's really just for the record that we make sure we got everyone's name spelled right and their address.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that everyone here who would like to share their thoughts and concerns is able to do that. Okay? Given that, I'm going to open the public comment section for PSLU 23-0008. Those, I'm going to start with this list. Flora Bennett, Betty Bennett, Brenda Jones, Alma Shannon, Kathy Holbrook, would you please stand here? And on the second sheet I have Stacy Jackson, Patricia Baker, Harriet Weinbaum, Paul Garrison, Zora Sims, Richard Gardner, I'm sorry? Larnard, and Tracy Pease. Could you stand over here? So then when this list is done, then we'll do this group over here, okay? So again, Ms. Bennett, Ms. Jones, Ms. Shannon, Ms. Holbrook, Ms. Holcomb, Ms. Jackson, Ms. Parker, Ms. Weingart, Mr. Garrison, Ms. Sims, Mr. Larnard, and Ms. Pease. Thank you so very much for your cooperation.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Betty Bennett. Address is 25351 Frederick Street. Neighborhood is the Bradbury Park Association, and I'm the association president. And I just wanted to ask Mr. Riggert if he could put the presentation on the neighborhood slide with the...
Which slide would you like, ma'am?
the one that shows Carlton.
The buffer
Beach
one?
and the,
Sure.
That one right there, yeah. Okay, so I'm 25351 Fredericks. I'm right at the lower, looking to me, the lower right. Okay. So I attended Monday's night council meeting, and it does seem as though the council is set on moving forward with this plan. There are still concerns with the noise and the increased traffic that is going to put on the infrastructure that's in place. I know Mr. Riggert mentioned that they hear us when we say that, but they haven't given any solutions of how they're going to address the noise. I know that Councilmember Meldelbaum, I might have that wrong, he asked for a noise study. I don't know if that's available yet, but he wanted to know what type of decimal the noise level is going to be in the neighborhood. And just keep in mind that the trees do carry the sound. It amplifies the sound. So I don't know how the noise is going to be addressed. And I think they're minimizing the effect on beach roads as far as the traffic, also on 9 Mile Road. And also I wanted to mention they're moving forward with a recirculating system versus a freshwater system. So that's inherently more liability for the city. There's more upfront ongoing operational costs for the city. And you gotta have a full-time maintenance person to maintain that type of system. And just the increased liability is because of the germs. It's recirculating, but it runs for 2 hours before it's purified again. So my time is up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Flora Bennett. I live at 25351 Frederick Street. I had attended some of the master plan that from 2 years ago, and one of the things that was in the presentation was that they wanted to be reflective of the community desires. And the community did list some of the things that they desired. They wanted a nature center, an indoor pool, a dog park, picnic pavilions, a walking trail. Now, splash pad was on there, but it was way down on the list. But that seems to be the first thing that's being built in this master plan. My concern is with the environmental impact on the environment. which includes removal of mature trees. And also, you have the Rouge River. You have a lot of tributaries that flow into that river. Have there been studies done on the impact of that? I did hear him mention about putting in a system for stormwater because you're coming in to bury a 6,000 plus water tank, which means a removal of a lot of earth. You're going to cover it with 7,000 square feet of concrete. That doesn't include the parking area. That's probably an additional 10,000 square foot of concrete, and that's all we need is more concrete instead of trying to come up with a solution to just have a green space without all the additional construction. Who's to say, you know, you have a swimming pool here at the Civic Center that's closed because it's too expensive to maintain. So maybe 10 years from now, the splash pad gets closed because it has become too expensive to maintain. I think you all need to really study this closer and consider everything that everyone is going to bring up here tonight before you vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Brenda Fred Jones. I live at 21690 Beach Road, which is located, I notice now my land is where you're going to put your park. So last week I got documentation from the city, the first time since this has been going on, that you want 10 feet of my property, running from north to south. Now I notice you're going to get some of the backyard over there for this park. It's a beautiful place, but not next door to me, not behind me, and not on my quiet neighborhood road. The traffic, and I know the 10 feet that you asked for a path walk.
One moment, please. Again, we can hear side conversations, and I'm going to ask you one more time to refrain from that. Thank you. Continue.
There's supposed to be 10 feet of a pathway, and I asked questions at last week's meeting. Nobody knew the answers. I was offered some money, and then I was offered to donate it. Those were my only two options. So I need some more information on this. In addition to the noise, the traffic, and the traffic study they did has nothing to do with the traffic that's going to come when the people find out it's a big old water park right in Southfield. This would be a nice park somewhere else, but not in a residential neighborhood. So I hope you all consider putting it somewhere else and not in our neighborhood.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alma Shannon. I'm at 21755 Beach Road. I'm right across where you're going to put the opening for them to go in and out. It's a nice suggestion, but not for us on Beach Road especially, because it's going to be a problem. You always say all you want about how nice it's going to be and how much revenue it's going to bring in. People from all over is supposed to come to this park if it's the largest park. It's going to be rafter, you're going to be fighting, shooting, and all the above when it comes to a park. And I'm just not for it. As long as it's somewhere else, it's fine. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Holcomb. I live at 22715 Carlton. We've been there for over 30 years and seen all of the major changes taking place in Beechwoods. First thing I'd like to address is the fact that this is a residential neighborhood. I'm concerned about the effect it will have, the new splash pad will have on the environment that we are in now. Our property backs up to the driving range. So you said the lights will be not bother people because of the trees. Well, let me tell you about the lights that shine from the driving range. It lights up our entire backyard and all the backside of our house, including bedrooms and kitchens, every time they're left on. So they're not always automatically turned off at a time that would be helpful for the families living in their area. I think we had in our mind, when we talked about a splash pad for the community, something smaller and a little easier to put in and not be so invasive with the culture on either side of Beach and Carlton. We are a community that is small, it's quiet, and that's why we live there. And we're afraid of what will be happening when you put something as big as that into a residential area. My suggestion would be is to find a place that would have all the amenities that splash pad has into a location that isn't in the middle of a residential area. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
Good evening, Stacy Jackson, Southfield resident. I'm also the association president of Beechwood Acres Homeowners Association, which covers Beach Road and 9 Mile, and the two streets, Rougewood, Maplewood, that sit across that turn in from Beechwood. I'd like to first start with the question that I'm hoping someone could answer for me tonight. Could someone please explain the easement regulation and verify whether it's the same regulatory process for commercial and residential property? That's the first question. What I'd like to say going forward is that the master plan that they mentioned that took place 2.5 years ago, let me remind you that that was when the pandemic started. The same cast of representatives that reflect on this literally told City Council that they had spoken to both associations here tonight and that we had approved of the splash park and an amphitheater. We had not. We reached out to City Council and to the mayor and demanded that our voices be heard because no one had notified us. So in 2021, the same group came out. We met with the mayor. There was a study done, not just with our community, but with the entire city. The residents here tonight did mention the results. Splash Pad ranked 5th or 6th. It was not even the top 3 for the entire city's request for redevelopment here. What I'd like to say is that the residents here are not against redevelopment. And unlike what other elected officials presume, we are not against the joys of laughter of children. That's why we're here. We're trying to get someone of authority, someone sensible, to see that we are speaking out for our children, for our community, for our families that live within this park. They mentioned walkable and drivable space. This goes up against the back of these people's houses, where right now it's just a rickety chain link fence. We're coming here to ask for solutions. How about putting a privacy fence along that so that Carlton people aren't being spied upon when we have visitors coming into that park? How about traffic lights into the park so that it is not a traffic jam, so that residents that live on Beach can turn in and out of their properties? How about putting up tow-away signs so that people don't park along Beach because there is no walkable space anywhere there for our communities? Also, I am disturbed that if this was the master plan in 2020, 2021, and 2022, why no one responsible reached out to these neighbors before 3 days before this meeting to say that they needed their property to achieve this park redevelopment. Now, I'm not here as a foe. In fact, just for transparency.
Ms. Jackson, you
Yes.
have 10 seconds.
Yes, I see the clock. I am actually in love with this city and our community, and that's why we're here tonight. I am hoping that you postpone this vote and do your due diligence. Thank you.
Good evening, Patricia Baker, 21920 Beach Road. I am one of the houses that's right behind where you want to put the splash pad. It took me 10 minutes to get out of my driveway today, and this is before a splash pad, a park, or anything was there. I love my community, I love my quietness, but if I got ready to sell my house, who would buy my house behind a splash pad? If anybody was in the market to buy a house with a splash pad behind it, they would not purchase my property. And I am totally against this splash pad putting there. I was offered a pittance of my property 3 days ago for some encasement or something, which I think is totally not right. And then, like my neighbor said, if I didn't take the money, it would be donated. We all pay our taxes. Nobody's donating our tax money to us. So I am totally against this splash pad. Thank you.
Because thank you for allowing me to speak. Because I have so much material here, I'm going to speed talk. And if I'm talking too fast, please stop me.
Through the chair.
My name is...
I just want you to be aware that a copy of your letter, each one of the Planning Commission has already received it.
Okay, but a lot of these people haven't.
Okay, I'm just letting you know, though.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay. My name is Harriet Weinbaum. We live at 22305 Carlton Avenue in Southfield, Michigan, and our home backs up to Beechwood Civic Center golf course. Okay. Apparently, you've received my letter. I'm just going to hit the highlights. It appears to me that the information presented to the Southfield residents is disingenuous and that the figures and many other things told to the residents are not evidence-based. In other words, substantiated by data. I do not understand how the proposal for a splash pad and everything that goes along with it contributes to the revitalization of our neighborhoods. Nowhere in what Chris from OHM has planned are there any recommendations made for buffer zones. Tonight is the first time I heard him talk about buffer zones and noise control for ourselves who border the park and our neighbors. And if you would refer to at some point Southfield Noise Control 2016, Article 11. Also, I'm concerned about lighting, trash disposal, and sanitary conditions of the splash pad. How will everything be maintained? How will maintenance be performed? Who will take care of the splash pad, parking lots, bathrooms? And by the way, to keep it more sanitary, you actually need to have showers, which none of these people have mentioned, traffic, etc. There needs to be expert testing of water samples, monitoring of visitors, and what will be the overall maintenance costs, including the water bill and liability insurance. Our property values and those of our neighbors will decline. There are going to be huge effects on the wildlife and environment. I do not see how the proposed project at Beechwoods is consistent with the City of Southfield Master Plan 2023 to 2028 and its objectives. The open spaces have to be protected. I'm going to go to something else right now since you have what I submitted to this gentleman. Okay, we need to be included in the conversations regarding the splash pad. There needs to be a line-by-line itemized accounting of the finances. Things need to be substantiated by data. I do research for my living. That's part of what I do. This is not supported, it's not evidence-based, a lot of this. Also, I have at least 60 pages that I did not submit on splash pads. And there was a major lawsuit in 2022, March the 10th, 2022, and any of you would be privy to this, Washtenaw County, that's Ann Arbor, versus Vortex Aquatic Structures. Also, splash pad versus freshwater versus recirculation.
You have 10 seconds.
I got it. Thank you. Recirculation is a bad way to go. It's more costly. It contributes to more bacteria. I can give you 60 pages of documentation.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Dr. Richard Larned. I live at 22305 Carlton, which is directly across from this proposed splash pad. It was my understanding that this kind of grant money is intended to be for the public. It looks a lot here like this is being designed to be for the Department of Parks and Rec. I understand they need to use a park, but one of the things that's really against this project is the park itself. This park has a very bad track record. It used to have a pool, used to have a hockey rink, used to have a golf course. It doesn't have any of those now. And the reason the golf course failed is because of the property itself. This is not a stable piece of property. This is a Rouge River wash. It's sand. It's not stable. And it's also right in the middle of a residential area. As you can see, there are homeowners that completely surround the park here. I want to propose that there is a much better location for this park, which would be right here at Civic Center. First of all, you would not have to build any new roads. You would not have to build any roads. The roads are present. You have two entrances to the Civic Center. You have a main highway out in front that has traffic circles already in place. You have lots of room here. You have companion activities that would be readily available. Basketball, hockey, no, basketball and baseball. It's all right here. You have a pool that you can't even maintain. I know you desperately want a water feature, but putting it right in the middle of the residential area is a very bad pick. The Civic Center has lots of room. You have an entire golf course you're not using. You have the roads in place, you have parking in place, you have lighting in place, you have signage in place, and if you put this park right in the middle of the Civic Center, it would be a tremendous feature. You could see it from Evergreen Road. If you want to make this a profitable thing, then you should not stick it in our backyards and create congestion and problem and noise pollution for a business project which has a very questionable chance of being successful. There are water parks around here that are free. Why would people come and pay when they can go to a free park? As you can see, the community that's supposed to be served is mature adults. We won't use this park. Why should we have to suffer the consequences of placing this park in our backyard? I hope you consider moving this park.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Good evening. My name is Azola Sims, 21905 Maplewood Drive. I really don't have anything else to add in addition to my neighbors. I am against a real large splash park. That just does not seem right for the location. All I do is I pray that God will give you all the wisdom and the discernment to make the right decision for our neighborhood and this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tracy Pease. I am with Allies Becoming Co-Conspirators for Justice. I never just show up. I have to be called and I have to be asked to show up. And as I'm sitting here and I'm looking at all the residents that are opposed because they're losing some of their land, they're worried about noise. You know, I heard from the developers that they are inclusive and they took time to be inclusive, yet you didn't speak to the residents.
Excuse me.
In fact,
Ma'am,
excuse me.
Excuse me. Two things. Please speak to the
okay.
chair. And second, I didn't get your address.
Yes, 821 East Woodruff.
821?
East Woodruff.
Thank you.
Didn't include the residents. In fact, one of the residents who's looking at losing some of her land, they said, oh yeah, she's all for it. But nobody talked to her. That's gaslighting. And it's funny as I look around and the residents that are complaining are all in the black community. Why don't they go ahead and put this in the middle of a white residential area? What do you think Birmingham would say? What about Bloomfield Hills? Because as they're talking about lily pads, which is an awesome splash park, by the way, it's not in a residential area. How many people lost even a foot of land? But you want to go ahead and take land that people have bought? I mean, the optics on this, I mean, you got to see it. All right, you've got a white development company coming in to a black community and saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take some of your land. We'll give you a menial amount of money. But what happens to the property values? So before you go ahead and decide to have them come in, think about what's going on right now with the gentrification in the city of Detroit, and how people are losing their homes and can't afford it. And now you have another development company coming into the city of Southfield to build a splash pad in a residential area? Tell you what, try that in Birmingham. Try it in Bloomfield Hills.
You
See
have
what
10
those residents
seconds.
say. Thank you.
Most what I had to say has been said.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
We'll give you your full 3 minutes. Could you just give us your name and address, please?
Paul T. Garrison. I'm at 22321 Carlton.
Thank you.
I'm less than a football field from my property to the splash pad. Okay? I meant to hit 4 items. Nuisance control, that's already been mentioned, okay? The loss and decline of our property, inability to sell our property if this thing happens, that has been covered. The financial crisis that is going to cause an awful lot of people, like myself, who took my savings to move to a tranquil place and have been continuously upgrading that area as the city of Southfield has suggested. So the monies are going. So if this happens and it does not, the noise is not controlled, which I don't see how they can do it, where would I have to go? I have to suffer the rest of my life in a situation that is poor, okay? Another thought is the zoning. It's a residential zoning. You're going to change the zones. We know nothing about that, I guess. Maybe phase 2 or 3, okay? The other thing I want to really mention is there's a lot of people who've been here a long time, and some of us has been a short time, but it's a quiet community. I understand you got to do something with that park. Then make it the same type of situation that we're living under. Why change it and bring a storm that is going to hurt a lot of us permanently, okay, for the rest of our lives, okay? So zoning is important. Another thing is the master plan. Many of us didn't have anything to do with that. The community should have the right to deal with a master plan. If you're having it during COVID times, who's going to show up, okay? Another thought, Civic Center. I had that on my letter. That's great, okay? But the other thing is, I didn't know. There's none that's actually sitting in a residential area. I think we should have the same due diligence when you talk about putting a park. So, and I think this is just for money, okay? Just so Southfield can make more money and be more popular. I don't think there's anyone up there that lives in our neighborhood. If you are, raise your hand.
Thank you. Are there any additional thoughts or comments for the public comment section in our public hearing? Are there any additional thoughts or comments in our public hearing section? You may approach the podium and state your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Harriet Weinbaum, 22305 Carlton Avenue, Southfield, Michigan. What I would ask all of you to do is to consider the residents. We could all work together, we could have a conversation, we could have meetings, you know, not just, I mean, I understand your protocol is 3 minutes, but meetings where people could really get some answers to things and try to work out something differently. The fact that the Department of Parks and Recreation and OHM, and I don't know whomever else, wants to put in the largest splash pad in the state of Michigan is outrageous. It's outrageous. And the repercussions, it's not just about the traffic for a year. This project is going to take years and years to do. It's going to cost an exorbitant amount of money. And I love living in Southfield. I love a lot of my neighbors. I care about them. But, you know, when you think about finances, things have not been maintained here. So how are they ever going to maintain a splash pad? It's outrageous. And in terms of trees and vegetation, Chris knows this. I talked to him the other night. What are they going to do? Put in little trees? That's not a buffer. Nobody even considered buffers or noise pollution. And if you look at all the things, all the evidence I have case after case about the problems with splash pads. I mean, please look at some of that, and if you're interested, you could call me, and I could give you the evidence. Please, thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Last call, public comment. Anyone else interested in sharing their thoughts? At this time, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Planner
go ahead,
Crowe?
go ahead.
We're going to close the public hearing on PSLU 23-0008.
Through the chair, I took notes of high-level issues that have been brought up tonight. So if you would allow me, I'd like to have the Parks and Recreation team come up, and between the two of us, we will try to answer those questions first, and then we'll turn it over to the Planning Commission for further questions. So if you want to bring your team up here. So again, the first...
One moment, Terry. Again, let me caution everyone here. This room, you can hear everything. So I'm going to ask again, please keep your side comments outside. Take them outside because they're very distractive, okay? Thank you. Planner Crowe.
And again, I'll, some of these issues have been brought up multiple times, so I'll try to just only ask them once each. So the first issue that was raised, and it was raised a considerable amount of time, is the noise. So if you could address how we're going to try to mitigate noise on this project.
Is the mic, excuse me. So I can speak to the design issues, and then maybe Ms. Fields can speak to the operations and maintenance. So when we did locate this within the park, you know, we did try to locate this as equidistant as we could from the adjacent properties, essentially within the park. We're looking at using it and saving as much of the vegetation as we can, as well as installing new vegetation to make sure that this is buffered from the surrounding community to the extent possible. I'll say too that within the operations, I'm going to steal your thunder a little bit, but I know that there's a window of when this will be operational between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and there's been thoughts too about no amplified sound. So those are some of the issues within the design. Maybe Ms. Fields
If I could also, though,
yeah.
we have minimum standards for tree planting, so any evergreens have to be at least 6 feet tall. And I know that in 2 locations, you're In addition to the existing woodlands, you'll be providing evergreen to help deaden the noise in specific locations. And again, they have to be minimum 6 feet tall.
Correct. And while we're talking about nursery stock, the standards we're specifying for the remaining material is generally a 2.5-inch caliper tree, which is generally industry standard for a project like this, and multi-stem trees generally in the 10-foot range. So they're not necessarily going to be small stock. They're going to be, decently sized. So.
Do you have anything else to add? Okay. The next issue that was brought up several times is about increased traffic. Now, you mentioned there was a traffic study. If you could give a summary of that tonight, but I'm going to ask that you provide that to us prior to the council meeting, and then we'll share that with the council. But typically, there's levels of service, there's average daily traffic based on existing situations. Then the Institute of Traffic Engineers has increased average daily traffic weekdays and weekends and peak hours, AM and PM, based on the type of facilities. So I know that all was factored in. I don't know if you could give a high-level overview of that, but if not, please make sure our office has that in advance to share with the council.
I can, and I will absolutely make sure you have that. I was thinking we had sent that through. So planner code is correct. We do have volumes along Beach Road to understand what the current traffic, AVD, average volume, the average volume of traffic is. We also have the code, the precedent facilities of this type, so we understand based off of those facilities what the traffic coming to and from a facility of this type is and what those hours are. Those have been calculated by our traffic engineers. We will definitely provide them to the planning department and make those available.
I know there were some concerns about the recycling system. I know that it is regulated by the Michigan Health Department, but is there anything else that you can talk about, chlorination and other safety measures with reusing recycling water based on the product that's being proposed?
Yep. So, like I said, I think the pool sets the standard. The state sets the standards for what we abide by. But the system is being designed by a splash pad vendor who specializes in design of this type. And I don't necessarily know I can't speak to all the components of it because it is a very technical system. But it is designed, I believe I heard someone say 2 hours for recirculating. The state standards are 30 minutes, so it's actually going to recirculate faster than that. There are components within this. We have, there have been instances where recirculating systems have malfunctioned. That's a malfunctioning system. That does happen. One of the things that I think we are aware of here, though, is where some of those systems fail is the backup of the backflow preventers. That means water that should be going out is actually coming back in. We've designed the system to ensure that it does not happen. And again, I'm not the designer of that specific system, so I'd be doing a disservice to try to sound technical and speak to it. But I can say that that is being considered carefully, and this is going to be designed and maintained in accordance with the state. The state also requires, I heard someone mention water testing. I mean, that is an ongoing requirement of this facility, is that it'll have water tested on a fairly regular basis. So if there are issues, they'll be identified very, very quickly.
Thank you. I know there was some reference to the master plan of the Parks and Rec Department as well as Sustainable Southfield, Ms. Fields, and there's desires by the public for dog park, walking trail, and so forth. I know we're meeting tomorrow, actually, to talk about a dog park in another facility. Walking trails tend to be one of the top 3 requests of communities, not just in Southfield in particular, but across the nation. And I want to address the easement issue. So there are 2 separate projects happening here. We applied for federal and state funding for a new 10-foot wide pathway on the east side of Beach Road from 9 Mile down to Shiawassee, and that will connect into the trail that was done recently on Shiawassee. As you know, and I've given you updates, We're currently working with Farmington, Farmington Hills, Hazel Park, Oak Park, and Ferndale to work on a 9-mile greenway corridor. And our hope is that we will be linking I-275 to I-75 with a 10-mile greenway corridor on 9 Mile. We've been focusing on installing benches and trash receptacles. As a matter of fact, 3 were recently installed in front of the fire stations on 9 Mile. We've been improving all our bus stops on 9 Mile. And this is part of a regional plan for trails. The funding for the 10-foot wide pathway on Beach between 9 and Shiawassee requires easement for the pathway on the 2 private properties. There's an existing underground easement for stormwater and sewer. We need, on top of that, we need a 10-foot wide easement. So the 2 individuals that spoke that they were received an offer for that easement is for the pathway. It's a separate project, and it has to, that's coming from the engineering department, and that's part of our grant requirements, is that we have to contact any private property owners where we require easement, and we have to make them an offer fair market value. And that's how that money is generated for the 10-foot wide strip for the width of their property. I can tell you that no private property is required or is it intended for the acquisition of this project. The lines that are shown here are just the 350 and 700-foot radius. No private property is needed or will be acquired for this particular project. And Ms. Fields, if you want to talk about just in general the dog park and the pool and some of the other things that came out of the master plan, we are working on those in other facilities within the city.
Sure, thank you, Terry. When we did the Beachwoods master plan process, there were a lot of different activities that folks wanted to see there. Terry brought up the dog park. There was an entertainment area. There were trails. There was a splash pad. Basketball was brought up there. And if you look at the Beachwoods master plan, the one that was adopted by City Council, it includes many of those amenities. We are looking at future basketball happening out there. Picnic shelters was an amenity that folks wanted to see. A pool and a dog park. We are addressing dog park needs within the city of Southfield. We are having conversations about an alternate park for the dog park. I think I've spoken before to this group and talked a little bit about a development of one of our city parks, the dog park. The dog park did come up at Beachwoods, but we have a lot of play there. We have a lot of kids there. And matching a dog park with that kind of environment wasn't something that our administration wanted to move forward with. The pool right now is closed. We maintained it for over 50 years. The last 3 to 4 years, it was very sketchy because the repairs that were needed. There is no money for a brand new pool. There hasn't been money for a brand new pool for a long time. So we either kept maintaining what we had until we couldn't anymore, or we could have shut it down 5 years ago. But we wanted to invest in the repairs so that we could extend the life of that pool a little bit longer, and we did it as long as we could. It became necessary to close it because we couldn't get vendors or folks to come in and repair it. It was too dangerous. So we have shut the pool down. There have been conversations about annexing the pool, the current pool, and putting a roof over it, redesigning it, and attaching it to the sports arena. There has been conversation about that. The cost for that estimate, and it's very rough cost, is about $22 million. We don't have that right now. The other opportunity or option that was talked about is a community center that had an indoor pool, a community center that had designated areas for senior programming and for special events and for more basketball and more indoor programming and dance. We did some tours last year of some of the community centers in our area and came to an estimate of between $30 million and $55 million for a community center. We don't have that money. So right now, we don't have a water feature. We just don't. The splash pad did come up in the Beachwoods Master Plan. What also came as an opportunity to us is Oakland County Parks. Oakland County Parks approached us about Beachwoods. They loved the master plan. It had a good balance of activity, and it activated that 80-acre park that right now is very quiet, and it allowed for the kinds of activities that they specialize in, and that is walking trails and interpretive areas and boardwalks and taking advantage and opportunity of that Rouge River there. So Oakland County Parks approached us about a partnership there, and we're willing to bring dollars to the table to help us start this master plan process. So we are in conversation with them, and we are looking at leasing that property to them. There is a property line that really is at the trailhead that Chris had marked on this map to the south. So it's toward the Rouge River. And they're looking at putting pathways in. They're looking at putting boardwalks in. That is for the future. That is to come. But right now, what that allowed us to do is be able to start the development process at Beachwoods. Them bringing money to the table. They have talked about splitting the costs of the parking lot. They are giving grants to some of the south communities, South End communities of $500,000. So we are taking those monies and directing them to this project. So for us, we look at the landscape of all of our parks. We look at the landscape of all of our responsibilities. That was a golf course. It has been quiet for some time. We have a very vibrant golf course here at Evergreen that is doing very well. We have tennis courts that we're investing in here at Civic Center Park. We did some development at Miller and Sims Park with pickleball courts and basketball courts and walking trails. We know how important outdoor space is to our community, outdoor spaces across the globe. As we went through a pandemic that showed us that folks wanted a place to go. They want a place to be active. They want a place to be with their kids and their grandkids. Beachwoods Park is one of our largest parks. It is 80 acres. I have a community of 75,000 people that we serve. I know that there are some hesitations here with this park. We have addressed and tried to address every single factor of development here. This wasn't something that was done overnight. We want folks to be able to come into this park and feel safe and enjoy themselves. Chris spoke about conversations with our police chief. Well, we don't do anything without collaborating with our safety department, right? We are looking at having detailed officers there at Beachwoods, just in conversation with our chief. Our parks are safe. Our parks continue to be safe. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens by communication, that happens by dedication, and that happens by expertise and professionalism. And that's what we have here. So as we continue to spend time in our parks and continue to develop our parks, we continue to work with our city service team. We are not in this by ourselves by any means. And we are looking forward to activating this park. We have taken safety to the top level here. We're looking at security cameras. We are having lighting. I know that when you have a park and you have lighting, it makes people uncomfortable, but it is very true. The lighting in the parking lot will be for the parking lot. We will have security cameras there. Chris showed you a slide about operations. It is not a requirement to have lifeguards at a splash pad, But what we will have, we will either call attendants or staffing there. They will have first aid, AED, and they will be certified in life-saving techniques. So we will have people at the top of that slide. We will have people on the ground level. You saw buildings with restrooms. Those don't clean themselves. We will have folks and staff maintaining that park, just like we do all the rest of our parks. I have our park superintendent here who can tell you how many times our staff is in the parks removing trash and taking care of our facilities, and our maintenance standards are very high. Oakland County would never approach us about Beechwoods Park if they didn't think our maintenance standards are very high. They want to partner with us. They want to grow together. And we want the same thing, but we do want to provide some activities here that take care of and that addresses some of the needs that we've heard. And I think we're doing that. So if there's any more questions about the master plan.
I think you actually covered several of the other ones that came up. But there was another one that was talked about as far as environmental impact and the Rouge River. I know that being here 13 years, that the golf course, half of it would flood, and the other half didn't get enough water because the irrigation system was so old they couldn't buy parts, and that was part of the challenges with the golf course. It also is good recreation planning that you have passive types of recreation within the floodway, in a floodplain. And I think that the trails and the passive areas and the boardwalks are being designed to be in the areas that may overflood during heavy rains, and that this is more upland from that floodplain area. Also, Chris had mentioned that we are following the highest stringent stormwater management requirements of Oakland County. So we have to accommodate for any of the impervious surface areas. We have to be able to retain it and then drain it, percolate it off at the agricultural rate. So any impervious surfaces being added to will be taken care of on site, and there's other environmental things like bioswales and green space to help with that mitigation. I believe Ms. Fields addressed the safety concerns both within the park and on the street, working with the police department. You'll have an office that's going to be staffed there the whole time. The one question I had is, on this separate entrance, will there be a gate that would be closed at night? But that's a possibility.
Will we talk about that?
No, that's okay. So there is not that was a discussion we had, is whether it made sense to put a vehicle control gate at the entrance. And it all revolved around safety. What would be the safer avenue, to have the gate to allow, to not allow cars to come in, or to not have the gate and have an easier time for police to monitor the park? And ultimately, it was determined that the safer route would be to not have a gate, such that if a police officer were to come and do a drive-by and monitor the park, that they had an easier time to be able to do that and incorporate that into their daily operations.
I know there was a question about the itemized accounting, and I know all we have at this time is cost estimates, which I think can be shared, but at some point, we'd have to bid this out, and the lowest qualified bidder would have to come back to City Council, and that'd have to be approved, so there would be a full disclosure of the cost. At this point, though, all there is the preliminary design and cost estimates. There was a comment about a number of facilities have been closed over the years, such as the pool and the golf course, and there are many reasons for that. And there's also changing needs and desires of community for recreation. Let me see here. There was a comment about the development group, but this is a city-led project directed by the City Council, working within the Parks and Recreation Department as the managers of this project. It has to be bid out publicly through our system. So this isn't a private entity coming here and developing the park. There was some suggestions about coming here to the Civic Center, and there's pros and cons. I will tell you, as a planner, both this site is zoned residential, and the campus that we're located on is zoned residential. And parks and recreation facilities are permitted through special use in any residential zone. So the zoning is similar for this community park and for Civic Center. I think that we've covered the majority of the major concerns, and I'd like to turn it back over to the Planning Commission through the chair for further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Crowe. Commissioner Bernuti.
Thank you. You mentioned that the OC staff would be doing the cleanup after hours,
Yes, ma'am.
and the hours are 10 to 8, right?
No, none of the hours have been established to this point. We're still evaluating that. Days and hours of operation have not, as well as whether we're going to go by, when you come into the splash pad, you can stay as long as you want, which you could stay all day, or where we're leaning more toward is timeframes. So you can pay to come into the splash pad, you're there for 2 or 3 hours, that span of time. After that 3-hour period is over, we shut the splash pad down, that group leaves, and the next group comes in. There will be cleaning and maintenance there all day long.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No other questions.
Commissioner Goodwin-Dye.
Okay, I'm, Mr. Martin, I'm gonna be you today.
Take it.
Uh-oh. Okay, there's a big concern about the sound, the barriers. And I understand that we can use natural, nature to kind of
Buffer vegetation?
Buffers, yes, thank you for the word. Buffer some of the sound. But it was brought up from the residents that maybe we could put a fence along, okay, that would assist in, you know, that sound. Is that a viable idea?
I don't know.
Okay. Could we talk about it?
Sure.
Okay. The parking, you said there was an overflow parking. Will there be shuttles? Because that's a long distance from that parking lot over there all the way over here to the splash pad.
We haven't talked about shuttles. I know that the parking that we are implementing, I believe it's 144 spaces, and the appropriate amount for the splash pad. What we have looked at is connectivity as we move forward. So being able to connect that parking lot to the parking lot in front. So I know that conversation, we have been having that conversation, and the property lends itself to that development, but that's not part of this first phase.
Okay, so that leads to my next question. What is the capacity for this splash pad?
300.
Yeah, the capacity for the splash pad is 300. We are not saying to this planning commission that we are going to put 300 people on that splash pad. We're probably going to look at about 150 to 200 kids and see how that feels, see what it's like to manage that number of folks on that splash pad, and learn from that as well. But it is, the capacity is there for 300.
Okay. How, in comparison to other splash pads in Michigan, what is the comparison in size?
We are probably going to be a little bit larger than West Bloomfield. They're a community of about 65,000. We're a little bit larger than that. So I know their splash pad, it might be a little bit smaller than that. I'd have to take a look at maybe Dodge Park, some of the folks that we talked to there. Yeah, we could get you some numbers of some of the surrounding communities.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any idea of how many employees it will take to maintain this splash pad?
I don't want to give you a set number. We're going to need people, attendance on the splash pad itself. We will need attendance in the offices. We will need folks maintaining and cleaning the restroom facilities, and we will need full-time maintenance at that site. And that's why we have part of this project as that new maintenance building. So it'll be able to house some equipment. I know that Oakland County Parks had talked about maintenance issues going forward if we were to maintain the property that they would lease, or if they would pay us to do that, or they would come in. So there's been some conversations so that we can have a seamless transition and we can continue to maintain our parks just like we maintain the rest of them right now.
Okay, I have no problem with the way you maintain, because Catapult Park is amazing. I'm just saying.
That's a county park.
Huh?
That's a county park.
Okay, well, it
But I'll let 'em know.
was us first.
Yes,
And we
it
had
was.
no issues. I used to live down the street, so.
Yes, ma'am.
You guys have done a great job. There was a question about the lighting. In some cities, they have motion sensor lights in the evening where they dim. And one of our, I think it was Culver's, weren't they talking about a motion sensor light? So that if a car pulls in, the lights come up a little brighter. Is that an opportunity to address some of the concerns of the residents?
I think that's a very actionable recommendation. We're in the process of specifying the final light fixture at this point, so I think that's definitely something that our team can look at as we refine that selection.
If I could, and I was remiss to mention that this new lighting program, any new lights, has to be shielded and directed downward. They have to be 0-foot candles at the property lines. And so unlike the driving range lights, which I imagine are more floodlights to handle everything, and maybe Ms. Fields can address that at some point, any new lighting will have to be shielded, directed downward, and not exceed the threshold of 0 to 2, which is the minimum amount of foot candles for safety for pedestrians at the property lines. But I think that's something you can look into as well as far as motion detection.
Okay. And the traffic study, are they utilizing areas that are comparable to ours?
Yes, so Planner Crode mentioned that there is a standard set by traffic engineers based off of facilities of this type. So there's actually a standardized, a little bit of a standard to it that we've been referencing. So that'll all be included within the.
And I understand what you're saying, facilities of this type. I'm talking about communities of this type, because you're putting it into a residential area. Are you looking at the traffic studies that a facility like this has been put in that community and how it has impacted the traffic?
I'll just add, in this particular case, because the city was involved with upgrading Beach Road, we have actual traffic volume counts for this specific area. And then we factor in what would be generated for the new use, and then look at the standards to see if the level of service is still acceptable. So we're not just using generic information, it's actually based on traffic counts on Beach and probably in the 9 Mile area, and then factoring in what additional traffic may be generated by this facility, and then comparing that to acceptable standards.
Okay. And another concern that was brought up, maybe we could put a traffic light in so that people can, get in and out.
Well, again, the traffic counts would have to warrant.
Dictate that.
Would have to dictate or warrant the need for a traffic light.
Okay. But it's not a no. If it's
Well,
needed,
again,
we
if
it's
there's a
needed.
certain level of service that requires the trigger of a traffic light, then we would have to install it. But I don't believe it's anywhere near the need for a traffic light other than what's at 9 Mile and then is there one at Shiawassee, but at least at 8 Mile?
That's correct. That's what the study would study, is exactly, what is the level of service and what impacts would this have, and what would be necessary to maintain a high level of service. From the study that our engineers have done, it suggests that there's no additional rework to Beach Woods or Beach Road that would be required to maintain that same level of service. So
Okay.
no light, no stop sign would be needed to be able to maintain that.
Okay. And I'm going to shift to the testing of the water. Do you know how often the water will be tested? Because I know when I go to the Y with my granddaughter, they're testing like every 45 minutes to an hour.
Admittedly, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if you guys know. But there is a standard that's set by the state. So if you know what it
And
is.
I don't want to give exact, but it is between 45 and an hour. It's similar to a pool. You know, we have the same kind of chemical setup where you have to balance the chemicals on an hourly time. And it's based on a lot of things too. It's the weather, it's the humidity. That's why it's really important to stay on it. And true, people talk about the state and the inspections, but we welcome them because it's safety first. So having operated the pool there, we know how important it is to have chemicals in balance, so yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Willis.
Thank you. Thank you. I am, I guess I'm listening about the noise, and I'm trying to find a way to quantify it, at least to me. You said there's a pool smaller than the one we're looking at for this site in West Bloomfield. Do you have any idea how far away that pool is from residents?
If I remember correctly, it backs up to condos. And I don't know the measurement of how far the pad is from the first house.
Okay.
I worked in West Bloomfield, so I'm very familiar with that whole space, but I couldn't give you distances on how far away it is from a house.
Would it be fair to say it's less than 350 feet?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know if West Bloomfield has had complaints about noise coming from the waiting pool?
You know, we were there, help me out, what month was it? There was still snow on the ground, so we were talking to them about their prior season. They did not have any complaints for noise requirements.
Do you know of any other similar pools in the area, other than West Bloomfield?
Any other?
Wade pools in the area?
This is a splash pad.
Splash, that's what I meant, okay.
I know there's a small splash pad over in Farmington.
So with the one in Farmington, do you know if there are any complaints from citizens that's near it?
I could give Ellen a call, but that's open to the public. It's, I believe, at Heritage Park. It's at Heritage Park. It's free. It's very small, and people come and go.
Okay. To help me out, I would really love to hear what distance it is between the splash pad and the nearest residence, and you know, if there have been any complaints.
Sure.
Also, even if it's in, I hear the complaint, you know, we may hear this 350 feet away. Do you have a way to, let's say, build a berm, some type of a sound deflector? Once it's done, would you have that kind of flexibility?
I don't. You want to speak to that?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm thinking about the plan and kind of where it's situated. We don't have a ton of real estate to be able to add a berm.
Yeah.
We do have those evergreen hedges that are going to get pretty healthy around the edges of the splash pad.
Because it seems to me highways can build a wall that really deflects a lot of sound. If there's a way to build a wall, if there's still a problem, that could be something, you know, to look at. To get past that one, will you have cross-country skiing in the winter?
Will we have cross-country skiing in the winter?
On the trails that you're looking at.
I know that the county does have some cross-country skiing on some of their trails out at Independence.
Okay, but would you, not planned here?
Not today.
Okay.
Not yet, not yet, because the trails aren't there yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Gruber.
I have two questions.
Is there a gate at the splash pad itself, so when you're not open, nobody can just walk in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the second question is, when are you thinking, if this were approved within the next month or so, when are you going to start and when will you open?
If this project is approved going forward, we would open May of '24, so this next Memorial Day.
Next year?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Martin?
I'm taking it back this time. First of all, you mentioned that this is a recycling. Where is the water going from the splash pad? None of the pictures showed any type of grading or anything on the ground so they could be seen. Yes? Is this better? Yes. Okay.
So I can give you the overview of it. If we get too technical, we'd need to find an engineer. But what'll happen here is there's an underground tank that's stored right here at 6,000 gallons. That's going to have a freshwater supply to it, and that will be what feeds the splash pad. Within this movement, this whole equipment room right here is full of pumps and manifolds and filters that will filter the water as it comes to the splash pad here. The water that comes out of the spray heads and all the fountains will be collected. It's treated water. It's treated as sanitary. It's not stormwater. We can't just dump it into...
You're missing my point.
Oh, am I sorry? My apologies.
My question is not on the source of the water. It's how does it get from the splash pad back to the pump?
Back to the pump.
Yeah, the floor.
Yeah.
The floor of the splash pad.
Yep.
Are there grades?
Yeah, so there are drains. There's drains in the splash pad.
You don't see any of the pictures that you showed or renderings. And
yeah, they look like they're blue, not catch basins, but they're drains.
Small grades.
Yeah, and they're located in the ground of the splash pad. They collect all the water and bring it back to the system.
Are they such a size so that toddlers won't get their toes stuck in them?
Oh yeah, yeah. The drains are actually specifically designed by the splash pad manufacturer for this application. It's not just any drain. It's actually designed to be in a splash pad with kids running all around it.
So they're small, okay.
Yeah.
We talked about traffic studies and that, but one of the things that really comes to mind with me is you can do a traffic study every day of the week. If it's not 90 degrees outside, people aren't going to be at the splash pad. You have to do a traffic study when the weather conditions have optimum usage of the splash pad. Do you have anybody or any statistics that have that type of data? Because it doesn't seem reasonable that someone would normally do a traffic study for a splash pad on a 50-degree day. I mean, you see my point?
Yeah, through the chair, the Institute of Traffic Engineers looks at the prime usage of each particular use and factors that in. When I was doing some park and recreation, we knew that a lot of pools and these types of facilities need 80 degrees or higher for them to be used. Usually if it's less than 80 degrees, people don't come out. So the Institute of Traffic Engineers researches a certain percentage of these throughout the country based on their prime usage, and that's where they come up with the average daily traffic for facilities based on occupancy or based on cars or based on seating. And that all gets factored in into the calculations of increased usage based on what the existing volume is and what the projected volume would be. Of course, not on the slowest day of the week, but during the peak AM, PM weekdays and AM, peak PM weekends.
There was a question related to overflow parking, and right now, basically, there's nothing planned for overflow parking. Could you go back to the slide where you showed the overhead with the splash pad and the other picnic area, the other parking lot?
You want the rendering?
Yeah, that'll do. There's nothing, it doesn't appear to be any type of linkage between the north and south parking lots. Is that something considered for overflow parking, or do you think that there's enough parking that you won't have that issue, or what do you plan to do for overflow parking?
So I'll say the parking lot is designed to the size of this facility. So initially, we believe that there's enough parking here for that splash pad. In the case that there is overflow parking or more parking required, we were referencing this parking lot up here as potential overflow, and it was recognized that, you do have to come onto Beach Road to access that parking lot. Part of the master plan and part of the future improvements is to look at, and you can kind of see the hint of a dashed line here, is to extend a drive between these two properties, or between the two parking lots, so that you can make that circulation internal to the park and not go out to Beach Road. So there is an accommodation that later on, and I think an intent within the master plan, that what you're referencing, the overflow connection, would be installed. But it's not within this first phase, just based off of the scope and scale of the project.
But if I could, Chris.
Yes, sir.
I believe there's a pedestrian path that runs.
There is,
between.
yes.
And I can tell you, when I was a baseball coach in tournaments at Founders Park in Farmington, you had your sports field, but during tournaments, the parking would need to be overflowed, and then we would walk a path about that distance to the main community facility that had the skate park and everything else for additional parking in the soccer fields. So I see this as a similar scenario where if it ever reached capacity at the new parking space, it's a short walk to the overflow parking in the north until that additional driveway gets put in, but there is a pedestrian linkage that's currently provided.
And one other thing that I'll add here is that there was an accommodation in thinking through what happens if that were the case. And so there is a drop-off area here with a front plaza here that, if somebody needed to drop people off and then drive up to the north to park the car and come back, there's a place for people to be spending time waiting for someone to be able to come back. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Parking enforcement was also mentioned on Beach, and I know that when we discussed this once before, residents were talking about people parking along Beach Road. And this is, I guess, for Ms. Field, in talking with the police, are they looking at doing something so that there's no parking along Beach, so that you don't have the problem with people parking and blocking residents in or causing traffic confusion?
There is no parking on Beach, you're correct. One of the suggestions from one of the community members here in one of our meetings brought that up. So we will be speaking to the police chief about that additional signage along Beach Road.
Yeah, because I remember they were talking about a karate demonstration or something going on at the
There was a
park.
tournament there in the past.
And
Yeah.
it's a mess on Beach Road. Okay. That's all I can come up with so far.
Through the chair, if we could respond to Commissioner Willis's question about the distance between houses at West Bloomfield's Lily Springs splash pad. Russell Malberg, who's part of our team here, is Recreation Operations Manager. He's got some exact figures for you real quick.
Thank you.
Thank you. I pulled up a digital measuring tool, and I'm looking at the center of Lily Pad Springs, the center.
Could you raise your microphone?
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's still down to Terry's level. So I looked at a digital measuring tool here, and just like Chris had done on our measurements up there from the center of the splash pad, if I go to the center of Lily Pad Springs, there's a condo building that is as little as 94 yards away. There's a synagogue across the street, which to the front door is roughly 97 yards, and then homes to the northeast as little as 109 yards or so. So in 3 different directions, significantly less than what we're proposing.
Okay. About the,
No, thank you.
okay. 97 yards would be close to 300 feet.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. 285, I think is what when I converted it into feet on the same measurement.
Okay, okay.
Thank
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, it's my turn for comments. First of all, I have some specific concerns regarding community involvement in this project. I'm disappointed to hear that the community feels that they have not had input. I'm very disappointed to hear that. I would like to encourage the Parks and Recreation Department to again revisit reaching out to the community to ensure that they at least believe that they are heard.
Commissioner, we had just this last week, had 2 community meetings with each of the homeowners associations. We did go through a community engagement master plan process specifically for Beechwoods. That was brought before council on a separate agenda item and voted on before council. And then the Beechwoods master plan was part of the 5-year master plan that we submit to the DNR when we submit for grants. And that was also approved just this last year as well.
Okay. Well, moving forward, there's a whole lot missing until the actual bid specifications are developed. So as part of that development process, you may wish to consider including the community along with that. There are a wealth of resources, a wealth of ideas, a wealth of suggestions that may be used as part of that development process.
Yes, ma'am.
The other thing that I have a concern about is when citizens that are talked about the acquisition of property for the walkway, I would encourage the other department to reach out to them to make sure they understand what it is being proposed and what it is they're being asked.
Yes, ma'am. Again, there's only two property owners that have been approached for this 10-foot wide shared use bike path, walking path easement. I spoke with one of the property owners outside in the intermission, so to speak, and I will let Ms. Schultz, our city engineer, know about the comments that were raised tonight and have her reach back out to the individuals.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think my final comment that I wrote is, again, going back to community goodwill. There's a whole lot of things that need to happen between today and the next piece of this project. I need the community to also understand that our charge, the Planning Commission's charge, is to ensure that the recommendation is based upon and satisfies the codes and site criteria here in the city. So our individual personal feelings about the project that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is making sure that the proposal satisfies the codes in the city, okay? With that, I'm going to call for the recommendation.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I'm going to read that. The recommendation is as follows. The Planning Department recommends favorable recommendation of the special use request by OHM on behalf of the City of Southfield to establish a recreational splash pad on property located at 22200 Beach Road, on the east side of Beach Road between 9 Mile and Shiawassee, for the following reasons and conditions. The residential character of the area shall be maintained. The subject property is so located as not to hinder the natural or presumed residential development of the area nor negatively impact existing woodlands and wetlands as defined by the city's adopted wetlands map and ordinance and general provisions. The subject property will act as a buffer or transitional area between a residential development and non-residential development. The location, size, intensity, and periods of operation are designed to eliminate any possible nuisance likely to emanate from which might be adverse to occupants of any other nearby permitted uses. The property use is in accord with the spirit and purpose of the chapter and is not inconsistent with or contrary to the objectives sought by, to be accomplished by the chapter and principles of sound planning. The proposed uses of such character and the vehicle traffic generated will not have an adverse impact, effect, or be detrimental to surrounding land uses or adjacent thoroughfare. The proposed use is of such character, intensity, and range on the site as to eliminate any adverse effects resulting from noise, dust, dirt, glare, odor, and fumes. The property use will not be adverse to the promotion of health, safety, and welfare of the community. Conditions include approval of the site plan PSP 23-0010 by the City Council, and the splash pad hours of operation to be determined by the City of Parks and Recreation based on operational factors and public demand.
Is there a motion?
To the chair, I'd like to propose approval of recommendation PSP 23-0001.
PSLU 23-0008.
I'm sorry.
That's
Yes.
okay.
Oh, boy. Yes, and PSLU 23-0008 and PSP 23-0010.
Through the chair, I recommend we take those as separate motions.
Okay.
So
Recite your motion.
I reset my motion to PSLU 23-0008
Is there a
for
second?
approval.
I second it.
It's been moved by Commissioner Martin and second by Commissioner Venuti that we accept the favorable recommendation of PSLU 23-0008. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
So just through the chair, this will be forwarded to City Council. There'll be another public hearing, and it's tentatively scheduled for July 10th, Monday, July 10th. And with that, I'd like to read in a recommendation for the site plan.
Correct.
The Planning Department recommends favorable recommendation of the site plan review by OHM on behalf of the owner of the City of Southfield to establish a recreational splash pad on property located at 22200 Beach Road between 9 Mile and Shiawassee for the following reasons and conditions. Subject to the conditions of PSLU 23-0008 approved by the City Council. The site, buildings, landscaping, and lighting shall be developed in accordance with the plans prepared by OHM advisors and dated May 30th, 2023. Approval of the site plan and/or building elevations represented herein does not constitute nor guarantee approval for signage. Separate approval for sign permits must be attained by the Building Department. Public art requirement to be met and approved by the Public Arts Commission. This was taken to the Public Arts Commission last week, and they made a favorable recommendation. The site shall be developed in accordance with the site plan sheet C-103 and dated 6/5/23. The building shall be developed in accordance with elevation sheets A201 through 205 dated 6/5/23. Landscape and irrigation plans sheet L001, L101 through 104, L501 dated 6/5/23. Tree protection fencing must be installed as required by section 5.56, consistent with the tree inventory and removal plans prepared by OHM. Bike parking shall be installed in accordance with section 5.29 subsection 12. Lighting plan shall, prepared by OHM, exterior lighting shall be shielded to prevent spillage of glare onto adjacent properties. Petitioner is to execute a perpetual maintenance agreement for the landscape and parking areas on the site and in the rights-of-way, which include maintenance of the stormwater detention system. The petitioner is to implement the recommendations made by the Southfield Police Department's Crime Prevention Bureau regarding site security.
Okay, is there a motion?
Through the chair, I move for favorable recommendation of PSP 23-0010 site plan review.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's moved by Commissioner Willis and second by Commissioner Martin that we accept the favorable recommendation for PSP 22-0010. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Let the record reflect that that the motion carries and we have one objection.
And who was that? I didn't.
Me.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to move along with our agenda. If there is anyone that wants to leave the meeting because of the sound in the room, please make sure you leave quietly, okay? With that, we're going to move on to item H, PZTA 23-0002.
I'm going to wait 1 or 2 minutes.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to wait 1 or 2 minutes
Okay.
before I read this into the record.
No. Yeah. No. Yeah, it still makes, yes.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Yes, it will. Okay, so that's the same reason why they
Yeah.
kept the walls
Yeah.
on the freeway.
I think the walls.
Yeah, people will do things like that.
It's like, no, it depends on the kind of fence.
Yeah.
Because
And
I
it's
think
serious.
they said a minimum of 6 feet high. They
Yeah.
should be higher than that and close.
Okay, but my thing is,
I was in
we need to try to
I guess the guy
help the residents.
paying attention to
Issues.
Yeah.
And one of those things
Planner Crowe, can we reconvene?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, at this point, we were going to take a look at PZTA 23-0002. Commissioner Martin?
Sorry.
As you recall, we have a group of text amendments that we've been working on, directed in part by the City Council. And in summary, they deal with exterior ice chests and storage, retail sales of beer, wine, mixed spirit drink product, and spirits at gas stations. We also are trying to correct an issue with fence setbacks, materials and corner clearances for properties located with 2 residential streets, an issue dealing with accessory building height. Alex?
He's just close enough from the sound outside.
Alex, you gotta leave one door open. Okay. And then just a clarification that my position is referred to by ordinance city planner, but my working title is Director of Planning or Planning Director. So we just added that to the definition to make sure it's clear that throughout the ordinance, I'm referred to, my position is referred to in all those different titles. So again, the amendment purpose is to establish regulations related to exterior ice chests and beer, wine, spirit, drink products, and spirit at gas stations. These involve Article 2, Section 5.6 definitions, where we amend the definitions for gasoline filling stations versus gasoline service stations. Over time, as you know, I believe we only have 2 existing gas stations that actually do auto repair. Most of them have been converted to gas filling stations with the C-store, just gas filling stations. And then we're also recognizing that the C-stores have grown to more than newspapers, coffee, and gum. So we've defined retail. Article 4, general provisions, 5.28, outside storage. There's a change. There shall be no exterior sales of any product unless they're automotive related only where there are automotive service. All other exterior sale products have to be inside, including exterior ice chests unless they can meet several regulations to provide for barrier-free access. The ice chests themselves have to be barrier-free, accessible, and they cannot block a barrier-free access to the main entrance of the building. Article 18, General Business District, Section 5.169, uses permitted subject to special approval. Again, there's changes dealing with gasoline stations and then further changes in industrial district. The clarification of side yard material and corner clearance requirement for fences. There's been a fence contractor that's had several clients who live on corner properties. There's a current regulation that says all structures have to be 25 feet from the side yard. So if somebody has their principal rear yard and side yard where they would like to fence in for privacy, they're unable to do that with the way the ordinance is being interpreted with this strict 25-foot minimum setback from a side street, and then looking at the fence can't protrude in the front yard, and many property owners are losing a significant amount of their privacy. So we've talked to the building official, and he agrees that we're going to clarify that fences are exempted from that requirement. We talk about ornamental fence height and gates across driveways and new corner clearance and vision triangles for all those. And then here's an example where currently there's a 25-foot setback. So you can't exceed the fence in front of the property line. It has to be 25 feet back. So property owners are losing all of this area for privacy. And before there was a strict interpretation where the fence had to be even with the building itself. So all of the side yard would be lost. The new interpretation still does not protrude in the front yard, but allows to square off and be within 1 foot of the right-of-way to the rear property line. As long as there's not a driveway from the neighbor, then we'd have to meet that corner clearance requirement here, and then any corner clearances with internal driveways and then corner lots. So we've clarified all those in the ordinance. And then limit the height of single-family accessory structures to a maximum of 15 feet. Again, there was some interpretation where accessory structures had to meet the same height requirements as principal structures. And then clarification of the definitions for city planner. So the definition of a city planner to clarify assignment of certain roles and responsibilities referenced throughout the zoning ordinance by including the term city planner, planning director, and director of planning is equivalent under this definition. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but we are required to have a public hearing first.
At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for PZTA 23-0002. All interested parties, please stand to my left, your right, and approach the podium. You have 3 minutes.
Stacy Jackson, Southfield resident, again, Association President of Beechwood Acres Homeowners Association. I'd first like to say thank you all for your service. It's not about if you agree, it's about you doing what you've been charged to do. I would like to say thank you to the member that did vote on the right side of history for me in voting with the people. That being said, I'm concerned about our gas stations in our city being able to sell liquor. We currently have gas stations typically on every corner throughout our city, and in some areas on every corner in our city. If you drive throughout our city, you'll also notice that probably every so many feet, there's already an existing liquor store. I have concerns with our city being overflooded, saturated with liquor stores, accessibility, and influence. Those are the reasons that many of the residents that moved to Southfield moved away from cities that have access and flooded saturation of access to liquor. I don't think we need that at our gas stations. I think that if we have too much access, too much influence, that other things come with that. We know that there's been approval for a park. Should that be approved by City Council? Then within steps away from that park, there's not one, but 2 gas stations there. Right up the road, right at Beach and 9 Mile, are 3 more gas stations and a liquor store directly across the street. We need to be mindful, not just what fits within code, we also need to do what's right for our city. And who we are and what we represent and how we live, our way of life, should always be at the forefront. I am never one that come before council, planning, or any local government body with a complaint without a solution. I'm not against and opposed change, but I also think at the forefront should always be its people. I don't think the residents want that in the city of Southfield. I don't think they want it. I don't think it's necessary. I think we should really be mindful of not just who we are in Southfield, but who we will be. We don't need liquor stores inside of our gas stations. We're looking for a problem to happen. Thank you.
Is there any additional community input for PZ TA 23-0002?
Hello. My name's Sam Bacall. I own a gas station on 13 Mile in Greenfield. I've owned it more than 28 years. And yes, with all due respect to the neighbors and the association member, gas station business has evolved and liquor store demands have evolved in the past 30 years or more. Drugstores never carried liquor before. Dollar stores never carried liquor before. It's the nature of the business, nature of the people who are demanding the service. Other cities have done it in the past 10 years since the state made it open to all the cities. Surrounding cities, next door to us, Farmington Hills, Berkeley, Royal Oak have had it with no problems. Everybody who has liquor, whether it's a gas station, whether it's a party store, they have strict rules they have to apply with from the state, city, and local ordinances. Just because there's more licensees, it doesn't mean it's open to everybody. And another one is very important. Not every gas station is going to get liquor. We have approximately 35 gas stations in Southfield. At the most, in my estimate, maybe 5 will get it, maybe not. It's not for everybody. And even if it is, it's no danger. Years ago, we never carried cigarettes, we never carried lottery tickets. We do now. What danger did we bring to the public? Nothing. It's an evolvement of the demand of the customer. And to your answer, ma'am, the neighbors do want it. Recently, about a month and a half ago, I brought 900 signatures from locals who have to go across the street to purchase liquor. They say, I wish you have it here. So it's just an evolvement of business, free market. Thank you.
Is there any additional public comment for PZTA 23-0002? Any additional comment?
She has her hand up. She has her hand up.
Good evening. My name is Sharky Haddad, and I work with the Chaldean Chamber of Commerce. We represent about 1,000 members.
What is your address?
My address is 3012 Dalton Drive, Commerce Township. I have grown up in Southfield. I worked for the city of Southfield as a code enforcement officer. I lived in Southfield for 25 years. And I still have a soft spot for Southfield. And that's why I'm still active with the business community in Southfield. What I would like to say to you is that Southfield and West Bloomfield Township are the only 2 townships in Oakland County that do not allow gas stations to sell beer, wine, and liquor. This law was passed by Governor Snyder when he was a governor, allowing the gas stations to allow to sell beer, wine, and liquor. The trend has been small mom and pop liquor stores closing down, selling their liquor licenses to big gas stations with big space, because mom and pop liquor stores cannot compete with Costco, Sam's Club, CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, and Kmart. Those are tough competitors to mom and pop liquor stores. And the trend has been throughout the United States. The gas station, instead of repairing cars, they are being a convenience store that sells everything. And now a newer trend has been restaurants inside gas stations. Coolidge and 12 Mile was seen on Channel 7 with a special report of how convenient it is for neighbors to go in, get their gas station, get dinner for the family, and then purchase whatever they need, whether it's alcoholic or soft beverages. It is the trend. Southfield and West Spoonfield are behind. Southfield should not be behind, because Southfield, since the 80s, was the center of it all, and still the center of it all, and the leader in the metropolitan area in everything, and it should be in the forefront in this matter as well. Thank you very much.
Is there any additional comment regarding PZTA 23-0002? Given none, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of PZTA 23-0002. Commissioner Benuti.
Thank you. Has there been a study of any kind on those gas stations that have allowed liquor to be sold as far as security goes, or problems?
I will remind Planning Commission that this was a council-directed zoning text amendment.
Oh.
The council was comfortable with considering this, deferred this to the Planning Department and the Planning Commission to come up with regulations, hold a public hearing, and forward it. The fence setback, material corner clearances, the existing building height, and the definitions came out of the Building Department, the Planning Department, on issues that needed to be addressed. But this first item was directed by the City Council.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goodwin-Dye.
Yes, what is an accessory structure?
So accessory structure would be like a shed, or a detached garage, or a gazebo, or playhouse. Those are considered accessory structures. So we capping the height of those at 15 feet.
Okay.
Commissioner Willis.
Thank you. I don't have the packet that I was emailed, and I was hoping we had it here. There was a word that I was concerned with in the definition of the items that could be sold, and that word was notions. I don't know what that is, because it's everything, and it seems to not have a definition. So it seems to me to open up the door for selling things like, let's say, narcotic paraphernalia, because it would fall under the idea of notions. It would open up the door for inappropriate sex objects or other kinds of things.
Well, if I could.
And I'm exaggerating, so please forgive me.
We can look at the definition of notions, but
Okay.
sex items and other things are regulated by other ordinances in the city that prohibit the sale of that, the sale of TCB products, anything narcotics. Those are all prohibited by other ordinances in the city. And it's true that we were one of only 2 communities that previously prohibited the sale of beer, wine, and liquor. And also, I'll mention that I believe there's different licenses you can get a quote-unquote cheaper license to sell beer and wine only, or their beer, wine, and spirits or liquor is a more expensive option. And I do believe the one public speaker who stated that not all gas stations will carry this product because they won't be able to either afford it or they don't have the size for the inventory. But again, we looked at definitions as the way the state defines these products, and we will look into the term notions, because I know that's something we didn't just make up on our own, but we will try to get clarification for you on that.
And again, my concern is not narcotic sales, but narcotic paraphernalia, things that, you know, the old gas stations, we were concerned with the pipe. We were concerned with things that kind of promoted those subjects. Recognizing that marijuana is now legal, the pipe would be legal, but I would wonder if paraphernalia...
Well, again,
would be the
I
kinds of
believe
things-
that any drug paraphernalia is regulated separately under a separate ordinance.
Okay. The second question is mixed drink products. Would the mixed drink products be sold, and I'm going to assume it's going to be sold in a bottle that's still sealed, factory sealed?
Well, again, all of this is going to be controlled by the liquor license authority through the state. So
Okay.
they'll regulate what can and can't be sold and the types of products that can be sold.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Gruber.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Martin.
I have a question about alcohol sales and can't seek approval for an exterior ice chest?
Yeah, so this was discussed by actually at council when we asked, you know, they directed us to look into, we did inventory of all existing gas stations with the help of the codes department to look at any current violations. If you recall, approximately 3 years ago, all exterior ice chests were excluded to continue their nonconformity. And we've had movement towards compliance where a number of gas stations that had outside ice chests moved them inside into those freezer containers, but not all. And I think there was a lax of enforcement during COVID. So then the codes department started to enforce what was on the books after the pandemic had been lifted. And so council said, we understand why there were a number of non-conforming ice chests, because they were blocking barrier-free access to the building, or they weren't barrier-free accessible themselves. So they asked us to work in to the ordinance for some exceptions. If they can meet these 10 stringent tests where they're not blocking entrance to the front door, they're not blocking accessible entrance from a barrier-free parking space to the entrance of the door, where they're not taking away a parking space, where they themselves are accessible, that they're not causing any blind spots or blocking corner clearance, then a gas station could apply administratively to have an ice chest. But then there was a trade-off. When some gas station owners said that we need to have the ice chests outside because we don't have enough room on the inside with our inventory, one particular council person said that don't come back to us and ask for beer, wine, liquor sales inside. If you don't have enough room for an ice machine, then you don't have enough room for liquor and wine. So we try to find a compromise. If a gas station owner wants to sell beer, liquor, and wine, they have to sell ice inside, and they have to remove all exterior convenience items. And the only exception, again, is auto-related items such as windshield wiper fluid and snow brushes, but those can only be sold outside if there is a repair station, which I believe we only have 2 of. So when these regulations were first put in place probably 40 or 50 years ago, many gas stations had 2, 3, automobile repair bays, and they only sold a small amount of product, newspapers, coffee, cigarettes, maybe gum. And now they've become full retail convenience stores, and I know from a lot of information that's been provided to me now, 50% or more of their income comes from these convenience stores. So we try to update and modernize our regulations based on the changing market values, the changing uses and habits of automobile users, and we try to also kind of provide an a la carte menu. If you don't want this, you can have this, but if you have this, you can't have that. So that's really a long answer to explaining how there is some narrow instances or circumstances that if a gas station has a small service area, a booth or a small store, and they don't want to sell beer, wine, and liquor, they can have outside sales of ice, but they have to meet the requirements that don't preclude barrier-free access.
Okay. I guess if I had an upright freezer that wasn't blocking my door, I could have it outside, but I still couldn't have liquor inside.
That's right. We really, I mean, what got passed, and I believe either late 2019 or 2020, was no exterior ice chest sales at all. And slowly there's been some movement towards compliance. We have more gas stations that comply with selling ice inside with the modern open the door containers versus the old big mammoth ones that we have pictures of. And but there's still some that are not conforming, and we want them to be conforming, but they have to meet certain guidelines.
Okay. Right. They mentioned automotive filling stations versus gasoline stations. I assume that an EV filling station is included in the automotive, okay, because it doesn't specify that, and we're starting to see more and more EV come around, so that's something that might want to be considered, putting in EV charging in that. In chapter 45, article 2, in section 5.8, they have over-the-counter drugs. They have drugs, which I assume that they're talking about, they don't say over-the-counter drugs, but that's what popped in my mind, because it has drugs and dry goods. When you say drugs, you're talking about over-the-counter drugs, I assume, and
like aspirin or
yeah, but
decongestant.
that saying drugs by itself is, you have to say over-the-counter. That needs to be changed, really and truly. And oh, okay, the rest of them are all for control. City planner.
Mr. Martin,
Yes, sir.
What was the article section again?
It was a new subsection 27 on retail. It's in chapter 45, article 2, definitions, section 5.8.
Okay. Retail definitions. Okay, we'll check that.
Yeah. And I wrote my notes 2 weeks ago after trying to remember what the heck I was talking about. Oh, there's an item in there where they talk about propane tanks not being sold inside. That's dangerous. That's an explosion waiting to happen.
That's right. And currently, some gas stations has started to sell propane tanks, and they're not allowed or permitted, only in industrial districts. So we try to clarify that they are prohibited to be sold either inside or outside.
Oh, okay.
They're regulated by to only industrial districts. We even know of an instance where there's a non-conforming situation where a car wash sells propane tanks in a cage outside, but that's a That's a longstanding non-conforming situation. So we're just trying to say that that they're not allowed unless you meet the standards of the industrial district, and they have to be approved by the fire marshal.
Okay. Last but not least, there's talk that you mentioned that you can only sell automotive products outside during business hours.
Well, that's the current regulation, is that automobile-related items can be sold only during current business hours, and that was when there was retail, the maintenance of cars. So tires could be brought out during the operation of the repair mechanic hours and these other products. And then somehow over time, wood, you've seen those wood piles that are being sold, had nothing to do with automotive. T-shirts, lawn furniture, just a proliferation of exterior items have just kind of creeped their way outside. They have nothing to do with the automobile. And they were being regulated during business hours because back then, not everybody was open 24/7. So you might have a mechanic shop that was open 7 a.m. to say 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. During those hours, they could bring some exterior sales of tires and fluids and so forth. And over time, business owners have taken advantage of this extra space and have sold more and more different types of products outside.
I guess my question on that is that in the Chapter 45, Article 18, Paragraph B, you have gasoline service stations and shall not have outside storage or display except during business hours. 24/7 is going on in all the places now, so you have no limit on the time. Do you need to specify hours?
Well, again, it was tied to when there are 2 gas stations currently that still have service station. They have mechanical service. Those aren't open 24/7, so those products would be tied to the operation of the mechanic.
Here again, the gas station could be open 24, but the mechanic's not 24.
Right.
So you're tying, that's the point.
I'll look at it to clarify that too.
Yeah, 'cause
hours of operation of the mechanic.
Mechanical, yeah. I'm done.
Commissioners, are there any other comments?
I do have the question.
Commissioner Willis?
Thank you. There was a discussion, well, I've had a good discussion relative to fences. The borders of a property that's facing one direction, and I need to say, yes, that's it. Okay. I didn't understand how the red would either be changed or adjusted, because the house with the green around it, it seems like it cuts off whatever property privileges.
So if you look at the left-hand side,
right there.
Because there's 2 streets here, currently, this homeowner has to have a 25-foot setback and we look at the address of the property as the front yard. So this is the address of the property here. So this would be considered the side yard, and under the way it's currently written, this fence would have to be 25 feet back from his property line here. In the new scenario, they could, in theory, extend out 25 feet. But at no time could the corner here block the interior corner clearance. And I believe Mr. Payson measured this. And so even under the new requirements, it's not blocking that 15-foot triangle to allow for clear vision zone for pulling in and out of the driveway.
Would he take it, let's say, past the tree?
Well, again, it's got to be 1 foot inside of the property that's located on this street.
Okay.
And it cannot exceed, well, first of all, it wouldn't be able to exceed into the right-of-way, so it can't be in the right-of-way. And if this, there should be a 15-foot corner clearance triangle here. If that fence does or would encroach into that corner clearance, then they'd have to cut a 45 angle where the fence is.
Okay, I see it.
And this is all hypothetical, of course, on the scenario. I mean, what I think I said that when I first developed the fence ordinance, I literally looked at hundreds of different scenarios and tried to come up with a half a dozen that would fit probably 95% of all situations. And in a situation that hasn't been covered, the applicant or appellant still has the right to appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which triggers a public hearing, and neighbors would be notified and be able to come and say, hey, this is blocking my view.
Understood.
Commissioners, are there any additional comments or questions? I'd like to call for the recommendation.
Recommend favorable recommendation of the draft dated June 28th, 2023 for the following reasons. The proposed text amendment will amend Title V, Zoning and Planning, Chapter 45, Zoning of the Code of the City of Southfield by Article 2, Sections 5.6 and 5.8, Article 4, Sections 5.28, 5.37-1, and 5.46, Article 5, Section 5.64, and 5.69, Article 18, Section 5.169, Article 20, Sections 5.185-A, and Article 22, Sections 5.193 and 5.195, to permit the sale of alcoholic beverages in conjunction with gas station uses and subject to certain criteria and associated amendments, to clarify requirements pertaining to fencing materials and residential fencing in the side yard, to limit the height of residential accessory structures to 15 feet maximum, and to establish a definition for city planner and tie it to associated titles used to assign responsibilities under the zoning. And further, we'll make some clarifications based on comments that Commissioner Martin had raised prior to going to council.
Is there a motion?
To the chair, could you repeat that last sentence, please? I'm sorry.
We'll make some clarifications based on the issues that Commissioner Martin had raised.
I think I was reading at the time. Thank you.
Commissioners, is there a motion?
To the chair, I move that we accept the favorable recommendation.
Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Goodwin-Dye and second by Commissioner Willis that we accept the favorable recommendation for PZT A 23-0002. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
The motion,
Opposed.
opposed? It should be noted that Commissioner Benuti opposes the recommendation. Recommendation carries. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes. May I have some background, please?
Yeah, so, oh, sorry. Yeah, we have the study meeting from May 3rd and also the regular meeting from May 24th. If there are any questions?
I have no questions. I was sent a packet. I assumed, though, that I would get a packet here. I do not have the minutes.
Okay.
So I think we can approve, though, with my, at the earliest possibility.
Yeah, we'll send that out.
Okay.
Okay.
I did have a chance to read them, and I guess that follows up. This is the first meeting, I know we're kind of a new administration in that sense. First meeting in terms of packages. The packet that will be sent by way of email, we'll just need to duplicate those and bring the entire packet in. That could be a lot of paper, but okay, I hear you.
Mr. Willis, what would you like done? What didn't happen and what would you like done?
Oh, I guess I don't mind either way. The old practice was we would have a packet. And so I was looking forward to that old practice.
Okay, so let me just understand, because Mr. Payson probably handled that. He's not here. He'll be back on Monday. He forwarded you everything digitally?
He did.
And then Mr. Spence probably used to go through and copy everything?
Yes.
And give you a packet?
Yes.
At tonight's meeting?
Yes.
Okay, and again, we'll do whatever you want. We're trying to reduce paper. And we have some new people here, and if you prefer that it continues to be done in a particular way, we will honor that. And I'll make sure that we speak with Mr. Bolin and Mr. Payson to make sure that we fulfill what your requirements are.
I did have problems copying. I probably could have gotten through it, but I would love to have a packet.
Okay.
Okay.
Is everyone else, commissioners would like a hard copy?
Commissioner Benuti has a question.
On the May 3rd study meeting, Commissioner Martin asked about a computer system tracking quantity or something, but the answer wasn't in the minutes.
Well, I don't know if Mr. Bolin can respond to that, but again, all we're required to do in the minutes is to show who attended, what the motion is, who made the motion, who supported it, what the motion was, not all of the discussion. We do that kind of just as a summary courtesy, and again, with new team members doing minutes, we'll try to find the right volume between what was done in the past and what needs to be done in the future. You can always, when you get the drafts, if there's a pertinent piece of information that you want included, this would be the time to make that amendment.
Commissioner Martin.
To the chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the study meeting minutes of May 24th and, I'm sorry, the regular Planning Commission meeting of May 24th. I'd like to suggest we make one small correction to the May 3rd minutes, and in item PSP 23-0008, we put the address at 26760 Losser and remove the telegraph address. That's for the other item. And I'm sorry I didn't provide them sooner, but I just realized it today in reading the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Martin and second by Commissioner Benuti that we accept the May 3rd, 2023 study meeting with the correction provided by Commissioner Martin.
PSP 23-008.
And, right.
And approve the 24th.
And approve the minutes for May 24th, 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. At this time, I'd like to open the public comment section of our meeting. For those who are interested in talking with or sharing their thoughts and ideas or comments with the commission, please take a moment to review the parameters outlined on the public section of our agenda. At this point, I'm going to open public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? Is there any additional public comment? Any additional public comment? Given none, I'm closing the public comment section of our meeting. Planner Crowd, item H, the council item update.
Well, we had a lengthy public comment discussion at council meeting Monday, many of which was reiterated tonight. I think that took about an hour and 45 minutes regarding the proposed splash pad. Both adult use marijuana provisioning retail centers were approved. and their subsequent site plans were approved Monday night. And finally, I had a proposal for mini gateway signs. The council accepted and gave us permission to install 2 demonstration mini signs within the city rights-of-way. We're trying to utilize some money in our current fiscal year budget, which ends June 30th. And it was under $10,000, so they approved us moving forward with 2 of those. Those are consistent with the larger Welcome to Southfield, sponsored by Home of LTU. So those are the large ground signs. They cost anywhere from $12,000 to $18,000. The new mini signs are in the $4,500 range, and we have 2 to 3 dozen entrances into the city, main roads, either mile roads or half-a-mile roads that aren't covered by the main ground signs. And we have these utilitarian city, Southfield, entering city of Southfield, no parking between 2 and 5 a.m., don't do this, don't do that. So we're trying to clean up our gateway appearances. So those were basically the 3 planning items that were discussed Monday night.
Commissioners, are there any questions to Planner Crowe regarding the council item update?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Once again, were there any comments by the council on the dog park?
I don't recall any dog park comments, but I can tell you, as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually meeting with city administration and Parks and Recreation tomorrow morning to discuss a proposal for a dog park.
Thank you.
Any other comments or feedback for Planner Crowe?
No, thank you.
Okay. Given none, Planner Crowe, can we move on to miscellaneous?
I have nothing else to share with you other than to wish you a joyous 4th of July holiday.
Thank you.
Is there anything for the good of the order? Commissioner Martin?
I think we all need to take note that former mayor, city councilman Bacassi passed away last Sunday.
Yeah,
And just acknowledge that we're aware of it.
absolutely.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? Given none, I adjourn the meeting at 9:31 p.m.